listening to episode 181 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, your host, and today I'm interviewing Justin Stellman of Extreme Health Radio. So this man had a huge influence on my life and my health journey. I started listening to his podcast that he hosts with his wife, Kate, several years ago. I was driving a lot for my work, and so I would just listen to various health podcasts all day long, and theirs was definitely my favorite. And I think one of the main reasons why they were my favorite is I could tell that they actually had their heart in it. They were passionate about it. They weren't just looking to cash in on trends or just go through the motions to become the most popular health podcast or whatever. Their focus was truly to help people, and in their voice, in just the energy of their show, I could tell that they actually cared, and their focus was not to gain power and popularity and clicks, but it was just to put out really helpful and new information, connecting new dots that haven't been connected before. And I noticed how they've had on so many different guests over the years with so many different points of view. And what's really cool about that is that you're able to take a little bit from everybody and create your own lifestyle or protocol or health routine that works for you. And if it wasn't for Justin getting on me to start this podcast, it never would have happened. So he kept encouraging me, message after message, that I should make my own podcast. And I thought, everyone has a podcast. We don't need another one. I was on that train of thought, and he snapped me out of that and encouraged me to just get started. And here we are, over 180 episodes in, and I'm having so much fun with it and learning so much. Reading books and listening to lectures and podcasts is fun for me, and I'm more of an auditory learner, so I do better with listening to someone than reading. But I've noticed that my favorite way to learn is to ask questions to guests that I have on my podcast and take notes. And usually every show that I record, I have at least one or two actionable things that I could try out that is really exciting and fun for me to experiment with something new, especially if I interview Atom Bergstrom, who's a guest that I learned about from Justin and Kate, who's become a regular. Same thing with Morley Robbins. They've introduced me to so many people that have changed my life, mentors and friends, and I'm just so grateful to know them and call them my friend. So I'll stop rambling. This show is way overdue. I've been on Justin's show several times, and this is his first time on mine, and I know you guys will enjoy it. So here is Justin Stellman. All right, Justin Stellman, welcome to the show.
Dude, I'm so pumped to be here. Thanks, man, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was telling you before I hit record that this is way overdue. We've been talking about getting you on the show, and you've been gracious enough to have me on your show, I think 3 times. And I just loved your curious mind. And I remember listening to you and Kate before I started building a quote unquote following on social media. And I think I was delivering cannabis or something and driving around. I would just play your podcasts. and I love the information. And I could just tell that you guys had the same kind of perspective about natural health, of just always experimenting and connecting more dots and not just getting comfortable with how things are. So it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm super pumped because as you know, like the world of natural health, if you stay sort of stuck in a worldview or a paradigm for a long period of time, I was just telling you before, it just gets boring, right? It's the same old information over and over again. And that's what I was telling you, like you inspired me to start looking further and deeper. And Atom Bergstrom, when he was on our show, the same thing. And when you start looking and going deeper and deeper, like the world starts opening up to you and you start feeling just greater sense of energy. And I don't know what it is. It's like, for me, like I saw your post today where you said full circle on the iodine, and a few years ago you were talking, talking trash on it, but it's just cool to always question your beliefs, and always say like, am I right about this vitamin D stuff? Am I right? And really question everything. And I think that's, as long as you do that, you're going to have a curious mind and, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. I completely agree. My sunlight post was funny yesterday because a bunch of people, they go to extremes. When you question something, they take it to the extreme and say, oh, you must hate the sun. You must think it always causes cancer. It's like, no, I didn't say that. I think that's how the internet is, right? It's like these extreme camps that form.
Yeah, it's wild because you told me that you lost quite a few followers. And I'm just like, I see like nothing you say on Instagram triggers me in the least because like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone says. I don't get triggered really because I just don't let things affect me, and like it blows my mind. Like I don't even know what you posted about the sun, but the fact that people could unfollow you from that was just like mind bending,
Well, I know you've had Jack Kruse on the show multiple times, and I used to be like, student of his, and there's this kind of idea: the more sun, the better. It's like the source of healing, and I think there's something to the healing aspect. But I was just saying you can overdo it, and just saying that opened up a whole can of worms.
Well, too, I think it's really interesting too, because like you talk about a lot is context, and, is the sun good for us now versus, 100 years ago? Like, 100 years ago, we weren't consuming all of these just massive amounts of polyunsaturated fatty acids that are oxidizing on our skin, or we weren't exposed to the iron fortification program, like all these things were introduced to us within the last 100 years. And so, the sun to someone 100 years ago was probably a lot better, than it is now because of all the toxicities,
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I wanted to talk about your backstory a little bit and how you got into all this. Was it with your mom being diagnosed with cancer? I think, was that how you got your start in natural health?
Yeah. So in 95, I was like 20, 21 years old, and my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And she was in her mid 50s at the time. And it just kind of caught all of us off guard, and so I went to all of the oncology appointments, and she had gone down a couple different rabbit trails because my parents are both open-minded, and I think yours are too. And so she went to the Gerson. She checked out Gerson in Mexico. This is like mid 90s, right? And so she checked out Gerson. Then her and I went to a macrobiotic center in San Diego somewhere. But ultimately, I think her doctors scared her into getting chemotherapy and radiation, and doing the whole thing. And so at the time, it was really weird. Like I never thought that she was going to die from it, but the doctors gave her like a 10% chance of survival. It was pretty wild. But she went into like multiple instances in the hospital at the City of Hope, where she would go in for like 6 months at a time, like 3 months, 6 months times, where she was in like those bubbles, where you couldn't even touch her. And I watched her go through chemotherapy, radiation, bone marrow transplant, where I donated platelets because I was the only match for her. All that stuff, surgery. And I watched her just go from a vibrant mid 50s woman to someone that looked like they're in their 80s, like in a matter of 6 months. And so at one of the oncology appointments, at this time I knew nothing, right? I'm 20 years old, whatever. I didn't know anything. And I asked the doctor, I said, how come like so many people are getting cancer, And he's like, he kind of looked at me, and how you can just tell when someone doesn't know what they're talking about, but this is like his wheelhouse, right? Like he should know this. And he's like, well, I think it's just because, we have better testing or something. I just knew that he wasn't like, he didn't know what he was talking about. And so I watched my mom just go through this, and it was just insane. So since then she's had, I think, a couple heart attacks, a lung cancer, another skin cancer, and just a bunch of stuff. And the chemo has just ravaged her body. Like, oh my gosh. And so I knew that something was wrong. I knew that people were being diagnosed with this. It was like the plague of our time. And I knew that something was just really off. The doctors didn't know what they were talking about. And but something within me was like, there has to be a better way to heal from this, you know? And so that was in 95. And then I just kept working. She got better. She ultimately, she's still living. She's 82 years old. And she got better. She recovered, and life kind of went on. And then I saved up. I took a surf trip around the world for like a year. I just went traveling, surfing all over the world. And then I came back, and a friend of mine gave me a book called Fit for Life. Do you remember that guy? Harvey Diamond, I think. And he talked about cleansing and detox and food combining. You probably read it. And so at the time I read that book, and I was like, oh my gosh, like people can prevent cancer. People can heal from cancer, like without chemo. And then I just thought, okay, then why are they doing chemo then? And I tried to tell the doctors, and they wanted nothing to do with it. And then I started thinking, like, wait a second, is everything like, are they trying to prevent, like, what's going on here, you know? And so that opened up a world where I got into raw food. And so in 2003, from 23 to 2010, I became a raw food vegan for 7 years, like 100%. And that was a wild ride, dude. I feel like I'm still recovering from that. It's crazy.
Yeah, we've had such a similar past, because I feel like when you learn about these diseases, it's like you learn about alkaline water and fasting and raw foods, but then you get into mineral balancing and all this deeper stuff. Like you were the one that introduced me to Morley Robbins' work, and you just keep going down deeper and deeper rabbit holes to kind of get more to the root, right, of the issue. Because back then, did you think alkaline water and enzymes, and I mean enzymes are, I guess, a different story, enzyme therapy, but alkaline water and raw foods, juicing, did you think that was one of the big solutions?
Dude, I thought, yeah, because I got into raw food from a really popular guy at the time. You know who he is. But then I got introduced first to Jay Kordich, the juice man, who I think he healed himself of, what is it? Kidney cancer, I think, or bladder cancer. And he was the juice man, the guy on, with the thick eyebrows and all that. But yeah, so I bought into the whole thing, the enzymes and the veganism and the whole 9 yards. But, to me, that was such a transformative time. And it just sent me on this rabbit trail of exploration. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's a group of people that don't think the alkaline water is good, or, wait a second, there's carnivores who completely disagree with the raw food vegans, and so then it just kind of opens up all these rabbit trails. To just last night I was listening to a neurosurgeon, not the one that we think, the major one, but another neurosurgeon out of Australia talking about the carnivore diet. And so, I don't subscribe to it, and I'm not into it, but I love learning and seeing what people have to say. And I think that you're the same, you like exploring and going down rabbit trails and seeing what's interesting and what works, and constantly questioning your beliefs. And, we replay our old shows, 6 days a week, and the new shows come on Sunday. And sometimes I cringe. I've told you, like, the amount that I knew and the way I was so long ago, I cringe at those episodes, but whatever, it's fun,
I think they're great. I love your old shows. How many have you guys recorded now, you and Kate? Like, is it close to 1,000 or?
Yeah, we're on 7. I don't know what it is, 730 or 740, something like that. Wow. And so it's been super fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I think you just reposted your one with Andrew Saul, and I've been looking into the whole vitamin C thing, and it's so interesting. I think Jason Hommel, that we had on our shows, he kind of introduced me to the ascorbic acid research, and I think Abram Hoffer was the guy he referenced. So I started listening to him, and he was big into niacin therapy for schizophrenia, and it's I've been going down a lot of rabbit holes that I didn't think I would go down, because it kind of
Right.
counters what I learned from repeat or whatever the last couple of years.
So here's something like with Morley. I'm sort of rereading parts of his book right now, and when he talks about things that are like copper dependent or things like that, I often wonder, in Jason's work, he talks about multiple sort of factors that cause enzymes to function or hormones to turn on or to take different sort of biological pathways. And when Morley mentions stuff like, such and such as copper dependent cytochrome C oxidase or something, like I ask myself, well, how dependent? Like, what does that actually mean when it comes down to the molecule itself? Like, is copper responsible for 10%? And so you can say it's copper dependent, but how dependent and how, are there other mechanisms at play? And I think that's what Jason's kind of getting, showing ascorbic acid has other methods. And so when Morley talks about like how, ascorbic acid causes ceruloplasmin to fold incorrectly, and leach out copper, how much copper, is it leaching out and how often does that happen? And, are there other forms of ascorbic acid that don't do that? And so there's a lot of nuance. And so I'm excited to take Morley's course, coming up here.
Yeah.
But I think there's even more nuance than Morley even talks about,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I like that Morley's not militant, because I've had falling outs with previous teachers in the past because they're just so my way is the highway, and I think Morley has a little bit of that, but he's still open minded, and he likes I think when I challenge him, and yeah, you make a good point there with what percent like DAO enzyme. I think a lot of people in the pro metabolic community have been talking about that for the last, I don't know, year. And how that deactivates histamine and that helps with allergies and just people getting that information out there. But I used to believe it was all copper, like you said, but it's also zinc and vitamin C. So like that DAO enzyme, it does require copper, but also zinc and vitamin C. So it's like, what percentage of each? There's so much to uncover there.
Yeah. So like, Morley's thing with zinc is that it does the same thing as ascorbic acid, according to him, right? And I've looked at some of the research on that, and it does appear that it causes ceruloplasmin to leak copper, right? But is the ceruloplasmin that it's causing, like, is it causing potentially weakened ceruloplasmin or ceruloplasmin that's not expressed properly? Is it causing that copper to leak, or that ceruloplasmin protein to leak copper versus fully strengthened and energized ceruloplasmin? So, I think that there's a lot more nuance, and I think there's a real problem when it comes to, I get questions all the time, and I know you do too, and it drives me crazy. Is like, oh, Morley said don't take ascorbic acid, right? But then I had Dr. Honeyhacky on my show who's reversing cancers with IV ascorbic acid, right? So I don't know how you explain that. Like, okay, so the way I've always looked at it is there's a time for medicine and there's a time for like nuance in what you do on a daily basis, right? And so if you're going to follow Ray Peat and Morley and Dr. Jack Kruse and just put your head in the sand and just go full bore on what they say, that's great. But there's got to be room for context, and I've always said that, like, if I had some extra cells growing, I would probably get ascorbic acid, vitamin C. Kate just did that last, like 6 months ago, and, got an IV ascorbic acid. And if it destroys ceruloplasmin, if it really does, Dolores Lowe says that it doesn't, but if it does, then, you can always build up.
I was going to ask if you.
Yeah. She
I was going to ask if you looked at her work. That's
yeah. No, she's great. But the way I just look at it is like, you know what, if you're going to go down and get some ascorbic acid to potentially get rid of some cancer cells or to get over a flu or sickness, dude, you can always just boost up your copper later. No big deal. Mm-hmm. It's like no big deal, right? But people get so stuck in these camps. It's funny.
Absolutely, yeah. Or I think of like superfood supplement companies like that sell a lot of liposomal products, like that maybe they sell liposomal vitamin C and then a zinc supplement that has like, you know, a 18-to-1 zinc to copper ratio. And they're like promoting that lifestyle. And it's like tons of zinc, tons of vitamin C, barely any copper. I think that's a mistake too. And that's like most of the alternative health community, right? That's their message. It's like, watch out, don't get too much copper, but make sure you get enough vitamin C and zinc. It's like, well, isn't copper just as important?
Yeah, dude, it's insane because like Jason mentioned, I think on your show with him, I all the shows bleed together. Maybe it was on ours, but he was saying that like, you know, if you're gonna do the zinc and ascorbic acid, you better make sure you're doing the copper because you know they're seesaws, you know. And so, but like you mentioned, all the people that are promoting ascorbic acid and zinc don't even understand ceruloplasmin or copper biology at all. And so, I think that's an issue. But you know what? Like I always say, like if someone is attracted to some way of eating, then they should just do that and believe in it. And then if they start feeling symptoms, then they can just change. But to get into these arguments and to get, you know, I'm a Dr. Kruse guy. Like I love the one recently with, I don't know if you know, Matt, but did you know that the vitamin D debate is now over? Did you know that?
I saw the announcement.
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's now officially over, so none of us can talk about it. So, but it's just funny, like
that whole. Yeah, go ahead.
No. It's just funny. Too many people in camps, I think, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, and getting emotional about these things. Like I don't care. I think like you, if someone wants to supplement 50,000 IU vitamin D or even 5,000 a day, right? But there are people trying to like lock in, like this is the truth for everybody. And what's funny with the whole like Danny Roddy thing, I think he's a good guy. You know, he's a big repeat acolyte. And what's interesting is like his perspective is that now that I'm promoting cod liver oil, just Rosita, not anything else, not Carlson or anything else, just Rosita, like Morley, that just because it contains D3, I'm promoting D3 supplementation. But what's funny is that's like saying I just got back into chocolate thanks to Atom Bergstrom. You know, it's just he kind of influenced me to up my chocolate just listening to him talk about longevity. I think on your show, and you know, D3 is an ingredient in chocolate. There's vitamin D in chocolate. So like by eating chocolate, am I supplementing vitamin D? Is it the same thing? I don't think so. And so I don't think it applies to the Rosita cod liver oil. You know, where I'm still anti taking the extract of D3 by itself.
Yeah, and I think that at least when the cod liver oil, it's naturally synthesized. It's not something that's put there in some lipid matrix, you know, that's isolated by itself. And it's not even the D3. Like if you could snap your fingers and remove the polyunsaturated fatty acids, possibly, and the D3 from that supplement, you probably would because of the insane amount of retinol in that, you know? And so that's what you're really after. And so, you know, sometimes you need a little bit of poison with your medicine. And so, you know, if you have to deal with the effects of the vitamin D, then so be it. But I mean, I just think that people that are in these camps, I mean, it's kind of fun to watch. I kind of just sit on the outskirts and just kind of, you know, I read the thread and like, on that post, and there's like, I'm not sure if they've reached out to you, to Matt, you know, for a debate or whatever. And I just think, man, like, I don't know. I just think right now, you know, in the state of the world, the way things are, you know, like your spare time, you're researching and you're building your homestead, you know, like I think that kind of stuff is way more important than fighting with alternative health influencers about vitamin D. To me, it's just kind of funny, you know.
I completely, yeah, I've had my hands full with the homestead for sure. And yeah, it all comes down to battling with studies. That's what these debates are. And, you know, all the health influencers do it. The big ones on Instagram, they just fight by making studies, posts, you know, this guy is stupid because he said this, and here's this study that refutes what he's saying. And it's like, studies are really fascinating, but I think we should go a lot by experience, right? Like, especially our personal experience. And a lot of the time, my personal experience has been like the polar opposite of what is shared in the health community, and my observations. Like I say, I spoke to that guy on the phone about the high dose D for COVID, and he landed himself in the hospital with heart palpitations. And I
Hmm.
said, "Man, you created a magnesium deficiency and a potassium deficiency, and probably copper and some other things. But I'd say like definitely focus on magnesium because it sounds like you just tanked your magnesium from the D, and then you got heart palpitations." So
So what was this guy taking? 50,000?
he he got IV injected vitamin D3 or hormone D, as we like to call it. It a more
Yeah, yeah,
accurate name. And I think he was taking oral as well. So, it's like the COVID
wow,
cocktail, right? It's like they're just saying
yeah,
ascorbic acid, what vitamin D
zinc,
and
right?
zinc. Um,
Yeah,
which could work maybe if the copper's coming in. I don't know. It's just imbalanced to only have those three, especially the vitamin D, which I don't think is necessary. But yeah, there's just so much. Like with Jason's protocol, what's been interesting to me is like if you take this, you have to take this, and if you take this, you have to take this, and you just keep going
hmm,
down the line. Where next thing you know, you have 10 supplements that you need to take to balance each other. I think that's why people stick with whole food supplements because it's a lot simpler. But then the question is, are the nutrients actually in the whole foods?
yeah. Well, I know you mentioned that guy. What's the guy that works with Morley, who's got the farm in Texas, who did the liver biopsies of his cattle, that showed, I think it was a very low or very negligible amounts of copper in the beef liver. Um, and so that could be just his cows, or it could be all cows, or but you're right. Whole food supplements are ideal if you can guarantee the substances are full of what you think what's in there. And so, um,
Yeah.
I think that, like, you were talking about your vitamin C product, and I personally, the way I look at it is like I look at ascorbic acid as something that you would do intermittently on and off. Um, and if you were in a catastrophic situation, or if you want to just really take things to the next level. But I look at your whole food C as like a foundation, and then having ascorbic acid come in on top of that, I think could be extremely helpful. But I'm not averse to really changing my mind about stuff. And I like that post you did the other day about I think it was the ascorbic acid, where you're like, if I find evidence of one of my best selling products, I'll just stop selling it because I don't want to put something out there that hurts people. And I know you've had experience with people who do that, you know. So
or that's not as effective as something else. Yeah, I really questioned like liposomal ascorbic acid. That's a rabbit hole I've been delving into really deeply the last month. If that even matters. Doris Lowe says it doesn't. She says just plain old pharmaceutical grade ascorbic acid. When you take it, yeah, your gut bacteria will uptake it because it loves that stuff, but it'll make it into your system. Whereas with liposomal, it just bypasses the gut. That's the only benefit. But then you're not feeding the
so
gut bacteria the ascorbic acid which they use. So it's interesting.
so what's interesting to me about that is how the ascorbic acid molecule, the ascorbic acid is the outer shell, and then on the inside there's tyrosinase, there's JPK factors, there's bioflavonoids, and that's another rabbit trail. And there's all these constituents inside that molecule. And the research that I was reading a few months ago was talking about how, like, if you isolate the AA on the outer shell and just take that, the components inside are like a family unit. They're tightly bound together. And they want to be together. And so they will seek out that in your body and deplete your body of that so that they could remain together. And I haven't looked at Dolores Lowe. I was looking around for some of her research on that, and I didn't find anything. But I don't know. Have you seen any evidence of that?
I'll, I'll send you something. Yeah, I think I have like a forum post saved by her where she specifically addresses that whole food C thing because she basically says that the evidence is lacking for a whole food vitamin C molecule, that it only comes from that little infographic picture and that one blog post, and that
Uh-huh.
there's just not a lot of solid fat. Like she said, basically all the research they're using is ascorbic acid, and that's what grass makes and plants make and animals make. They actually make the ascorbic acid molecule. They don't make whole food C. So it's interesting. I mean, my current perspective on it is that I don't know if the bioflavonoids and the other stuff matters, but it definitely has an effect on copper. And so I would say just my perspective, as long as copper's coming in, then you're pretty safe. And I don't know, I think about, I was raised in chlorinated pools. Like I did the YMCA. I snuck into pools with my friends and jacuzzis, which are pools on steroids because it's steam and you're inhaling chlorine. And I grew up with acne and eczema and skin issues and rashes. And I would always get itchy where I would just itch all night after I went to the jacuzzi with my friends. And since learning that, chlorine depletes vitamin C, I wonder if I was deficient in vitamin C my whole life with that intense chlorine exposure, not to mention showering, for half my life before I discovered shower filters.
Yeah, it's amazing that we made it, like the diet that I grew up eating, and it's just insane that we made it. It was probably because we didn't get the any pokey things as much as they are now, but I grew up on all that stuff, dude, like the Pop-Tarts, the cereals, fortified with iron. It's the human body is amazing. And one of the things I constantly tell our people is that, like, if you're going into some new eating style and you're looking to experiment, I think that's a good thing. And I really do think, like, we have these invisible processes that happen inside of our body all the time that are driving biological functions. And maybe for some people that could be the growth of some extra cells, and, it's my understanding that we have like 3 to 4 major bouts of cancer in our life, the average human. But we get through it because our immune system gets on top of it and we never even know we have it. But if you were to get diagnosed at that time, you would be put in the chemotherapy, kind of going back to my mom's story, you'd be kind of put in that whole system once again. And so our body just gets on top of these things. And I really do feel like if we're in tune with like what our systems want, rather than following Ray Peat or following Jack Kruse or Morley Robbins or following any kind of one person, if we're really in tune with who we are, we're going to gravitate to the thing that's going to heal us, and whether we know we have something that needs to be healed or not. But the problem is, like, these biohackers drive me nuts because they're just looking at every, like, oh, my blood sugar is this, my fasting blood sugar and my, my hemoglobin and all this stuff. And it's like, I like how you are with just the intuitive nature of it and experimenting on yourself, because really just getting rid of all the studies and all the health influencers, and stop listening to them and just try some ascorbic acid, try some copper, see if you like it. And if you're drawn to something, maybe that something will actually end up healing you and you won't even know that the healing's occurring,
That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, because you can just get lost and confused the more you look at studies and listen to different influencers, because the studies and the influencers are saying completely opposite things, right? You could find, information to support whatever belief you want. So I wanted to ask you, Justin, about what you and Kate are doing over there with homesteading, since you brought that up, because I think, to me, that's like the ultimate security. Like, I don't know if the internet's going to be around, my entire life, or the supplement industry is going to be here my entire life. And so I'm just like creating growing food, plant and animal food, I think is really the goal. And you guys have, is it raised beds there and chickens? So.
Yeah. So we're kind of going down the same. We're trying to do what we can with what we have. And so we have, I think, 7 chickens, and we're going to get, I think, 3 or 4 more. And we just live in Southern California, and we have, a couple backyards, that we're kind of putting together. So we have about, I think, 10 fruit trees. We're going to get 6 more. And so we're going to get 10 chickens. The goal would be to get a goat like you have, to get a goat. And to get the chickens, I would love to have like maybe a pond to do fish, and I would love to, grow coconuts and bananas and stuff like that too. But yeah, I think that the way the direction is going, it's like the writing's on the wall. If you're following what's going on in the world right now. The supply chains are crumbling, and I think it's really important, like more than ever, to start growing some of your own food, whether that's sprouts, in your kitchen, or just grow something. So when this whole thing happened, I won't even say the word, but when this whole thing happened, my parents were going to go on a trip to Europe, like the day after Governor Newsom shut everything down, right? And I just knew, being in the alternative health field for so long, I knew right away. This is the first thing that I knew from day one, that this whole thing was engineered, and it's I don't know if it's real or not, but man, all the lockdowns and stuff like that, that's definitely real. And I just knew that something was wrong on day one. And I remember telling my parents that. And since then, we've been buying extra food, like a little bit each time we go. We'll buy some oysters, or we'll buy some extra meat, or whatever the case may be. And we've been doing that for 2 years. And we just bought a Harvest Right freeze dryer. I don't know if you've seen those things, man. Dude, those things are awesome. They essentially freeze dry your food, and they keep, I think, 96% of the nutrition for 30 years. That's amazing. So we bought one of those, and we're going to be just going hog wild here soon on freeze drying meat and milk and stuff like that, because I don't think the average person has any idea what's coming,
Yeah, those are really good suggestions. And I think about that often, and it's intimidating, because even my setup, I think some people might look at what I'm doing here being fully off grid, and they're like, oh wow, he's completely prepared. And no, I would if I had to put a percentage on it, I'm probably like 5% prepared. Even when you're like fully off grid and you're surrounded by wild game like deer, and there's so much, like up here. I mean, if I run out of propane, diesel, and gasoline, I can't use any of my machines, which means I'm snowed in for half the year. I can't clear all that by hand. And so there's a lot of like considerations, and it's contextual, based on where you live. But there's a million things to consider with what you call, prepping. I know you've looked into, and you can only prepare so much, which is kind of the scary part. Like, I mean, the practical thing I often think of is like stockpiling honey, because that, they found that in Egyptian tombs, right? So like, I like the idea of getting like thousands of pounds of honey and storing that, because you could just live on that as your carb source for a while.
Yeah, I remember what you posted on that. Like you posted those big, what are those big, like, I don't know, what are they, like 60 gallons of honey or something like that? All your buckets of it. And you said something like, you can't eat your Bitcoin, And so right after that, like, yeah, we should buy some honey. So we went and bought a few buckets of that stuff, and, that will last forever, and I just think that, we've lost the ancient ways, as Daniel Vitalis says, like we've lost the art of living like our ancestors did, and, being able to defend yourself, being able to defend your property, being able to, like, if the power went out, what would be the first thing you'd think about, and whatever that is, you should go fix that. And that's probably for me going to be water. Right. So I'm looking at doing like some rainwater collection. If I had my way, dude, I would have a rainwater collection system, which we're working on right now. But I would have a well. I would have a stream. I know there's ways that I've been doing some research into some different ways that you can build your own device that makes water from the humidity in the air. And so I'm going to start building that and see if that works. But I just think that the more you're connected to the system and relying on them, the worse it's going to be for anyone,
Yeah, and that's probably like 99% of people, right? I mean, especially the people on social media that are just going to the health food store and buying all their food at the health food store, and not thinking of, like, even getting chickens, which I think, like, that's how I started, was even when I was renting a cabin in Idlewild, California. I just got a chicken coop, and no rooster, just hens. And I had a couple beehives, which a black bear destroyed, but just getting some bees and some chickens, that's like, almost anyone could do that. I mean, even if they're renting. I guess the bees are tricky with neighbors, but
Yeah,
just starting
Kate was
somewhere, right?
starting somewhere. And, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And it wasn't until this whole thing happened 2 years ago that really kind of kicked my butt into start doing it, because there's always excuses, right? There's like, working on things, and there's so many excuses. But the other day, Kate was telling me that her sister was telling her that she's like, I don't know how you handle chickens. They just freak me out. And it's like spoken like a true city dweller, like, oh my, Kate and I were talking. We're like, dude, 200 years ago, if you were afraid to touch chickens, like you just didn't eat, maybe, like, I don't know what happened to our culture where we're afraid to do these things. I understand it's not fun to put your chickens down or that kind of thing, but to just hold a chicken, like we have come so far away from our roots and how we're supposed to be living that we can't even, fix things. We can't, have access to anything. I mean, it's amazing how far we've come, as far as dependency on the system.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I moved up here, I don't know, a little over 2 years ago, and I was so fortunate that my neighbors like MacGyver, like with tools and fixing stuff. And I grew up with a tech dad, so like he was fixing my older brother and I's computer when it would break down and get the black screen of death. He'd come in and do the code, and so I'm learning a lot about just how to use a wrench and like, all these a driver and all these different things, socket wrench. And it's pretty important skills to have, especially as a man, just learning how to build stuff and fix stuff. And that's been super cool.
Yeah, and I think the more that we can do that, the more self-reliant we become, And I'm the same way. I'm more savvy with computers and technology as well. But these are skills that we have to learn, And if our dads didn't teach us, that's cool, That wasn't his skill set. But at some point we have to start learning how to do this stuff. And so I just feel like the system wants us broke, dependent, depressed on their pharmaceuticals, scared and worried and fearful all the time, and just, willing to take whatever it is that they want to offer us as a solution. And our job is to empower ourselves so that we know about options, like there's a lot of things that we know about. Like I shared something on Instagram about, bee venom therapy and breast cancer. And, it's not something that I would probably do, but it's good to know that these things are on the table and there's evidence for them and research behind them, so that when the doctor says something to you or the media guy tells you that some new thing is out and you got to be super worried, you can just be like, you know what? I know if I do get whatever it is you say I'm going to get, I can do ultraviolet blood irradiation therapy. I could do ozone treatments. I could do coffee enemas. I could do Rife frequencies. I could do the Bob Beck protocol. I could do all these things, right? Because the more knowledge you have, I feel like the less you're able to be manipulated because you don't have any fear, And it's, with this recent strike on YouTube, I just posted like the only way they're going to win this is if they keep censoring us, That's their only, trick right now.
Yeah. But then you just get off their platforms, right? Onto all these different ones that are being created, BitChute or whatever, and you just sidestep them. I'm sure I won't be on YouTube forever. That thing's totally censored. People don't think, but they take down documentaries left and right off YouTube.
Yeah, it's funny. I watched in the sauna today. I watched a documentary about the World's Fairs, and I was trying to. So the three links that I had for this documentary were all from YouTube, and I'd saved them maybe a couple weeks ago. And I'm getting in my sauna today, thinking, "Oh, I want to watch those." Went to go pop. There's three of them. All of them are gone. And this was just like about the World's Fairs, like. Why would you take something like that down if it doesn't threaten the establishment,
Yeah, it's wild. I wanted to say, Justin, I think this is what got me hooked on your guys' podcast years ago was I love the emphasis you guys put on protocols and devices, because I feel like those get a lot of flack lately where people say they're expensive, they're unnecessary, all you need is nutrition. This is all just marketing. But the feeling I get after I do rectal ozone insufflation from Charles's machine, Crucial Fours,
Hmm.
like I can't recreate that with any supplement. I've tried,
Hmm.
it's nowhere close. And so some of these devices and treatments and protocols, like the effects that you can get, you cannot get from any supplement or even just going outside and grounding or sunlight. It's different. So I think just educating people on, affordable tools. They don't have to be, $30,000 or whatever for a hyperbaric chamber, but there's like levels that
Yeah.
people, like you were talking about what MMS before we started recording, which I never tried. My friends Dave and Will like projectile vomited, they said, when they first tried that years ago, but maybe they just overdid it. I don't know.
Yeah, Tim, it's funny, I was listening to Jim Humble about that, and he was talking about how MMS is actually a very weak oxidizer, which I thought that was interesting. But, to me, MMS is something that you have like a Band-Aid, like you have it at home. And if things start getting really bad, or if you start getting super sick, you just have it on hand. It's not something that you do on a regular basis. But, you know, in an ideal world, I love what Josh Rubin says on your show, and that is like food is the foundation, right? Um, but in a world that is that has our food supply radically altered with vitamin D, with iron, with polyunsaturated fatty acids and everything, canola oil and all that stuff, the food is, can be toxic as well. And so I think that it's really important for people to sort of, honestly, change their values. And I always tell people, like, bring these healing tools into your home, like invest, like a sauna's $1,200. You can get a, $3,000-$4,000 one if you want. You can get a rebounder. You can get, I started off with the little cheap ones, and you can get, they go up to $500, $600, $700, but just start bringing some of these things into your house. Because like if I feel like I'm getting sick, I'll do a bunch of rebounding for the 3 days, because that doesn't tax my cardiovascular, and it helps flush my lymphatic system. And it's something I could do if something happens. But having a rice machine on hand, having an ozone machine, I have one of those, and having I got that neck device. I think you got one of those too, and a PEMF device, and you have all the tools too. And that's how you overcame your eye thing, recently. And I don't know. I just think those tools are valuable, and I'd rather have those tools than like a brand new car.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially an electric car.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Totally.
And you use DMSO too, right? Is it dimethyl sulfoxide? Because when I was living in the RV, I used to mix that with my magnesium chloride, and I was like selling under the table like magnesium spray with DMSO in it. And that's the last time I used it, but you're kind of inspiring me to get back on it, because you've been posting it's like multi-use, right? It's like another good first aid thing to have.
Yeah, I went back and listened to some old radio shows with Dr. Morton Walker, the author of the book DMSO, Nature's Healer, I think. And looking at that book, and then looking at some of his work that he's put out, he referenced a guy by the name of Dr. Stanley Abrams, I think out of Oregon. And he was saying that I just did a recent radio show on strokes, just trying to, because I get a lot of questions, and you do too. Like they come to they flood in all about one thing for a while. And I'm like, okay, I'll just do one on strokes. And this guy, Stanley Abrams, was talking about how if you're able to do a DMSO IV, and I didn't even know that those things existed until maybe 6 months ago. But DMSO IV, you can reverse the damage of a stroke, but you have to do it within an hour of having the stroke. And I haven't had a chance to look into Stanley Abrams yet and his work on that, but that's who Morton Walker referenced. And I just think it's really important to have this knowledge, because if you just don't have any of this knowledge and you just take what they give you, it's just I don't know. It's not going to end up well, So.
Yeah, they get you in the system, and then dependent on their pharmaceuticals, and it's just hard to. You can see when someone's on pharmaceuticals, you can see the fog in their eyes, and especially when it's a family member, it's just soul crushing, because it's like a pretty tight mental prison that person's in.
So, hey, I wanted to ask you about because Kate's mom just recently went on statin drugs, and she just got the sharp thing recently too. And so now, she's been on statin drugs for, I think, like 3 or 4 months now. And I remember doing some research into them and looking at all the side effects, and Kate will call her, ask her how she is, and she'll complain of every one of these side effects, but she'll never pin it to the statin drugs, And I know you were saying with your mom, she's kind of dealing with some stuff too, right? And how's she doing?
She's doing really good. Yeah, years ago, it was a long time ago. I can't remember, maybe more than a decade. She was just kind of couch ridden and really fatigued, and then she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And then they found like one of her heart valves was leaking, and so they eventually put her on a pacemaker, gave her some more pharmaceuticals, and the pacemaker seemed to help, but it's just challenging with what I'm into with PEMF, and I got my lodestone bathtub and all of these really healing things that are like electromagnetic. It's like, or even just magnetic. They really limit treatment options when someone has a pacemaker in. I mean, just like the Magnetico sleep pad, right? Which can increase ATP production. You can't use that with a pacemaker. And so it's a really dark system that they've created. But at least she is open to getting the pacemaker taken out at some point. So I just keep kind of encouraging that, because she's on the magnesium, she's on the K2, from Mitolife, and she's even making magnesium bicarbonate. But yeah, it seems like, I mean, for the heart, I always tell people it's like magnesium, K2, and vitamin E. I know copper plays a role as well, but if you wanted to simplify it, it's like magnesium, vitamin K2, vitamin E. Those are like super heart nutrients.
Yeah, that's cool. It's difficult when it's family members, right? Where like they, sometimes they ask you and sometimes they don't. And going back kind of full circle, when I first started learning all this stuff, realizing that like family doesn't care, like they don't want to know. Sometimes they're just blocked off, and I've stopped sort of helping people that don't want help. But if someone is open, I'm just like, oh man, I'll just throw up so much stuff and so much information in their face. But if they're not open, I feel like we all get to experience, whatever it is that we came here for, and, that age old saying, I think is true. Like the only disease is a closed mind, and if you're willing to open your mind to alternative options, then you can heal from anything, but as long as you buy into a diagnosis or you think that pharmaceuticals are the only way, it's not that good for you. So
it's a good point. Yeah, I think it's a sign of maturity, that perspective that you have, because I know the first like 3 or 4 years that I was into health, when I got into it in 2010, I was so aggressive with my family and with people that I interacted with. It was like, you got to go fruitarian, low fat or whatever I was into at the time. And now over a decade in, if I, like I've been talking to a cashier at the health food store, and she said she's had anemia her whole life, and a blood transfusion made her feel really good. And I was just like, okay, that's great. Here's my podcast with Morley, though. If you want to listen to it, here it is. And I'm not going to like say anything else. It's just, there's more to the iron story that's probably the opposite of what you've learned. And if you're interested, I'll write it down here,
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because people that are just like sort of defend their positions. We had someone like that in the inside our academy a while back. They were telling me about their anemia, and they went on and on and on. And finally I said, well, there's no such thing as iron deficient anemia. Most likely it's going to be a copper deficiency and a lack of the associated enzymes that allows iron to be recycled through that whole RES system, and I could tell she was like, oh, what does all this mean? I don't understand. But my doctor said I'm anemic, and so I'm doing this and that. And I'm just like, okay, well, I can't help someone that just wants to identify with a label, if you want to say you're anemic, then that's cool. Then you get to experience everything that anemia has to offer you. I can't help you at that point. It's just funny.
It is, yeah. Just I'm thinking we should get into some of these questions because I'm sure some of them will be fun, fun side discussions if you're up for it.
Totally. I'll try my best. Yeah, for sure.
um, Let me see here. Uh, this is a really good one. What's your favorite information that you've received and put into practice from Atom Bergstrom?
From Atom Bergstrom. I think it kind of couples for me along with Dr. Kruse's work, just the circadian timing and understanding that our livers work at certain times, our small intestines work at a certain time, and eating food on time. What I like about Adam's work is that it makes total sense, and you can apply it to whatever dietary protocol you're doing. And so if you're vegan, you're a carnivore, whatever the case is, you're keto, all these diets that people do, you can do that from a solar nutrition kind of level. And so understanding circadian rhythms and all of that stuff, I think Adamson really helpful for me to put that kind of stuff into place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. I experimented pretty hard with that late last year, I think, and early this year. I was doing the almonds every morning and the potatoes at night, and felt great.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. Adam's got so much information stored in his head, and sometimes like people ask for studies. I'll see responses on Facebook. Is there a study showing XYZ? And sometimes there's studies for stuff, and sometimes there's just not. Because in order for a study to happen, there's got to be some financial gain behind it. And so a lot of the stuff that he comes up with, there's going to be no financial benefit to doing a study on that. And so it comes down to like intuition and trying things out. And but he's awesome. I love Adam. I don't agree with everything he has to say, but he's so fun to talk to. I love that guy.
Yeah, I love them too. My my favorite thing is wearing different colors. I took a break, but then I started doing it again like a week or two ago, and the Roy G. Biv starting on Monday, wearing the different colors. And I've even taken it far enough to have the same colored mug too.
That's so funny. That's awesome. Yeah, I love Adam. He's cool. He's like a hidden gem, in the alternative health space. He's such a disruptor, and I like that. Yeah, he's cool. I love him.
Yeah, he's the best. My friend Gaja asked your thoughts on skin cancer. I know you mentioned your mom dealt with that, right?
Yeah. So, I got a lot of this information from Dr. Jonathan Wright. He's out of Washington, but there's some really interesting information and studies showing like the extract of the eggplant skin, like that purple color. They've sort of synthesized that down into a product called BEC5 or Curaderm, Curaderm. And a lot of people apparently have had a lot of success with that. I know Rick Simpson has that whole Rick's RSO oil that you could get and apply topically. I know there's like ascorbics. The one I reference quite often is a guy by the name of Greg Caton, and he has a product on herbhealers.com called, I think it's formerly known as Cancema, Cancema, I think. And a lot of people have success with that. But the question is, why are we getting skin cancer? That study that's quite often referenced in Australia, where the highest amount of people in Australia getting skin cancer were people that are, office workers and people who spent the majority of their time indoors. And you have to wonder what kind of light you're exposed to when you're inside versus full spectrum sunlight. And why are people in Australia, as part of that study, getting skin cancers on areas of their body that are covered up by clothes? And so there's something going on. And I know you referenced a long time ago this idea of mixing these oxidized oils. And then you go like basically eating fried food while sitting on the beach, with your sunglasses on and your shoes on, and, synergizing the UV light with those fried oils is a really dangerous thing. And so it's a metabolic disorder and, caused by mineral dysregulation, probably as Morley would say. But I mean, there's a lot to it, but I think those are some places to start,
That's awesome. Yeah, I used to go to this water park with my friends. Forget the name of it, but it was down in Southern California. I remember like slathering on sunscreen and going down these water slides and uh, mixing sunscreen, chlorinated water, and just all day sun. And that's probably a recipe for skin cancer too. Just all
Oh
the
my
stuff
gosh.
in the sunscreen, depleting my vitamin C from the chlorine.
Gosh.
So I have less antioxidant protection from the sun, and it's wild.
It's crazy. It's wild. Yeah, it's so wild. And so many of the chemicals that are found in traditional sunscreens are just extremely carcinogenic. And you put that on your skin while you're eating fried foods with those rancid oils, and then you're getting, you're baking yourself in that UV light all day long. Instead of just spending like an hour in the sun, you're spending like 7-8 hours, and then you go home, and then you take your shirt off, and then you get your devices and with the blue light on your skin as well. And there's so many factors to it, but essentially it's just living an unnatural lifestyle, in my opinion, because that's all that stuff that you mentioned. Like, it's not natural to be in the sun for 8 hours a day, exposed to chlorinated water. Like, that's just not natural.
What's your experience with copper sulfate? Jason Hommel's protocol. I slowed down on it personally. I think I was taking a lot.
Yeah. So I started, just after the show we had with him. I think you had him on, and then I think we had him on. I heard about him from you. And then I started doing the copper sulfate probably a few days after. And then I started with like 1 drop. So I drink 3 of these like mason jars full of water a day. I just kind of sip on it. And I did 1 drop in each of the 3 things, because even though we're called like Extreme Health Radio, I feel like I'm the most non-extreme guy ever. Like, I don't go full bore into things like you do, like jumping right in. So I did 1 drop or 3 drops a day, and then I would do more. So now I'm up to 15 drops a day. I do 5 drops in each one. And then only like 4 days ago did I start doing it topically on the skin. I just never really felt called to do it. And I remember you mentioned how you had this like massive like reaction to it when you did your show with Atom. But I didn't really feel anything from the copper taking it like this until I started putting it on the skin. And now I'm doing some of the other minerals as well, but I don't know what it is. I have to think the absorption is a lot less doing it transdermally, but maybe that synergized with taking 15 milligrams a day in my water. Maybe that's kind of synergizing together, but I don't know. I do feel a lot better, but I don't feel that much different, honestly. But I don't know. I think it's cool.
I
I'm gonna
was
keep
thinking,
doing
Justin,
it.
maybe we should switch podcast names. I'll take Extreme Health Radio. You can be Mitolife Radio. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, it's so funny, right? I'm so like normal. So funny.
No, I think it's wise. I told the story the first time I did like, I don't know, 10 or 15 dropperfuls was mid interview with Atom Bergstrom. And I definitely got hit with the nausea. It passed, but it was a rough roller coaster.
Yeah, it's wild. I think it's really important to like go with your gut. I don't feel called or compelled or whatever the word is to do more than I'm doing now. The RDA, the thing I don't understand is I'd like, maybe we'll get some, I'll get some information on this, but Morley says that for every 60 milligrams of iron, there's 1 milligram of copper in your body, right? So it's a 60-to-1 ratio. And to me, he uses that as an argument to say that like, you don't really need all that much copper because it does so much in the body and it's so powerful, right? But the thing that resonated with me with Jason's protocol is that didn't make sense to me. And maybe there's a reason behind what Morley says there, but it seems to me that with the massive, like maybe in an ideal world, Morley's protocol with the low copper would work for someone. But look at how much iron we have in our body. Like I've got like 17,000 milligrams of iron stored in my body, in my tissues. And as a result of that, it's really difficult also to make sure you're not consuming more iron every day. Like if I have a piece of bread with some turkey on it and some egg or something like that, I'm going to get a couple milligrams of iron in that piece of bread. And so it makes sense. It just intuitively makes sense to increase your copper, like Jason talks about. It just makes a lot of sense. And so until I get some more clarification on why it's okay to have such low amounts of copper from Morley, I'm just going to keep doing Jason's protocol.
That's a great point. Yeah, I just learned that quercetin. They've been talking a lot about that quercetin. Because of the last 2 years. That it helps with the C thing. It's actually an iron chelator, which I found fascinating.
Have you tried?
There's a lot of supplements. I think. Yeah. Good.
No, I'm sorry. I think. Did you try? Have you tried that IP? Is it IP6 or? There's some supplement that Morley talks about that's supposed to be an iron chelator. I haven't tried that one yet.
I think I've taken it. Yeah, no, these iron chelators, you don't really feel like Shilajit, I feel, which is an iron chelator, but I think that's because it's also like a nootropic. But I've like megadosed like lactoferrin, I've taken IP6. But I think people have this conception with iron chelators, and I had this false belief that it just chelates it into the urine or the bowel. I don't know if it works like that. If you could just like pee out excess iron, because according to my full Monty iron panels that I think both of us are doing with the blood donation, like I was like 2 years in between full Monties, and my saturation went down, but I think some of my other markers, like I think it was ferritin that tripled. So basically, you can with these supplements. I think it's my understanding you can like mobilize it, like Morley talks about, right, and mobilize it out of the tissues into your bloodstream. Which then the only thing you have to do is dump it. Which the only solution is donating blood, right?
Yeah. So a while ago, I sat down and did the math on the amount of iron that you can get rid of while doing a blood donation. And I think it's like 250 milligrams, right, of iron, roughly, that you can get rid of in a standard blood donation. And so I thought to myself, okay, so the average person I read somewhere is consuming like, I think 15 to 20 milligrams of iron per day, which is insane. But if I were to get that down to like 3, if I can get 3 milligrams, how long would it take to get my body from 17,000 milligrams of iron stored in my tissues all the way down to what Morley says the recommendation for a male is like 5,000? And I want to know how he got to that, but let's just say 5,000. And so I figured it would take me like 13 years if I only consumed 3 milligrams of iron per day, and I did a blood donation every 60 days, every 2 months, it would take me 13 years. But then in that 13 years, I will have consumed, even at 3 milligrams of iron, I will have consumed another 13,000 milligrams of iron. So you can see how this is like, it's just a revolving door. Like you can't really get on top and bring your levels all the way down to where they should be because of what we've done in the past. And so that's why I just cringe when I hear people say they're like, oh, my doctor put me on an iron supplement, or, I got an iron infusion. I just go, oh my gosh, like you may never be able to recover from that,
Yeah, it's scary. I did see your calculation you posted about that, and it was interesting, but also depressing.
Yeah, totally.
What's interesting is this the second time I donated, I felt kind of tired. And, like Josh said on my show, you should feel either nothing or like a superhero or a superwoman for a few days. And the only thing I did different is I kind of rushed it. Like I had, something going on the next week, and I'm like, I got to go now. It's the only day I could do it. And so I just had snacks and went and donated, versus before I had like a burger and fries, I think even a Mexican Coke, like the full thing. I was like fully charged, and it wiped me out. Yeah, I was kind of tired for a few days. And so that's the one suggestion I have for everyone. It's like, don't rush it. Always eat a big meal before. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes before, but like an hour or two before you donate, because that made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have this, I don't know what, I guess I don't know if it's good or bad, but I don't really feel that much from the different things that I do. Like, so I could literally wake up without eating and go donate blood on an empty stomach. And I guarantee you I wouldn't pass out. Like I wouldn't. And so I remember Josh on your show saying that, those two things, you should either feel euphoric or at the most, or at the least, just nothing, And so I always just feel nothing. Like I could just go I could go exercise if I wanted to right after a blood donation. But I always do, I take my supplements, I eat a big meal, I drink a bunch of water, but I think that sometimes you don't have to feel things like whether it's a supplement or whether it's, a blood donation or something like that. People always feel like they have to feel things. And like, if you have a car that's super, super dirty and you haven't washed it in 3 years and then you wash it, it's going to be a big difference. You're going to notice a huge difference. But if you're washing it every week, you're not going to notice much difference. It's going to be, cleaned and you're not going to notice much difference. So if you're taking care of yourself, I don't think you would feel a lot of different things. And if you do, like for me and you, I know we have like, you do so much. I don't know if it's the copper doing it or the magnesium or whatever else, but sometimes you just do things because it's the right thing to do, and you take care of your system because it's the right thing to do, whether you feel anything or not.
That's a really good point. Yeah. How many years have you been donating blood? It's been a while, right?
Yeah, I think it's been like 3 years probably. Yeah, and I just recently, when I sat down and did those calculations about how it's almost impossible to get on top of your iron stores, I just decided, I'm going to go every 2 months, until I feel like I don't need to. And then when I heard Josh on your show, it was so funny because Josh is such a anti-supplement guy, and he's like, you could all be done with food, and I like that, and that's cool. But I thought it was really funny that he said that he donates blood every 60 days, because that's like a rather extreme thing to do. And he's been doing that for like 12 years or something, he said. And I just thought that for such a non-extreme guy to do something so extreme as to donate blood every 60 days, I thought that was really kind of ironic. But so yeah, the plan for me to do is for 60, every 60 days, I just switch arms, every time, right arm, left arm. And I'm just going to do that until I feel compelled not to.
I'll have to figure that out, the switching, because they always do my left because I have better veins. They always look at my right and say, "Oh, let's look at the other one." But I don't know. With all the stuff I do, I probably heal faster. I don't know.
Because I thought about that.
The tools,
I thought that was like a. Yeah. All that stuff you can help repair your veins. Some people, the lady told me some people's veins collapse because they donate so often. So. Wow. I don't want that to happen. So
I always think about the biohackers doing the constant IVs, like NAD drips, and every health conference, every couple months they're doing IVs. And it's like I've never done a vitamin IV. I don't know if I ever will, but I mean, I guess like you said, Kate did one recently and it helped. So I'm not opposed, but I think it's definitely overdone, right? It's like instead of eating food, they're just hooking themselves up to an IV.
Yeah, it's insane. It's really insane. It's cool to know that it exists, though. Like something like ultraviolet blood, that's a massive oxidant putting light into your blood like that. But it's good to know that stuff like that exists, or DMSO IV. I would never get one unless I absolutely had to, because if you're in a state where you need an IV to get better, then you're doing something wrong, So,
yeah, I was just listening to Dave Asprey yesterday because he has a lot of good ozone information, like hours and hours of ozone content. And I think he was talking about, like, was it 5-pass ozone or something, where they take out your blood, ozonate it, and then put it back in. And I was wondering, have you ever done that? Or
no, I haven't. If I were, I would rather just do the rectal insufflations, because it's my understanding that's like 90 to 95% as effective as IV, so I would just do that.
Yeah, definitely less invasive. Someone asked about vitamin A detox. I know you had, was it Grant Genero, I think, on your show, or the other guy? There's a couple, right?
Yeah. What's his name? Dr. Yeah, what's his name? Garrett Smith. Yeah, Grant wrote the book. And I don't think Garrett's written a book, but so someone asked about vitamin A detox. Must be from the copper forum, right? Yeah. So my understanding right now is that I've looked at a lot of the info from Grant, and we had Garrett on the show, Garrett Smith. I don't. right now, I don't subscribe to what they're talking about as far as vitamin A toxicity. I know it's possible to, over, sort of mega dosing, but Jason's group really, he's kind of going down that rabbit trail right now where vitamin A is a poison, and just like uh, Garrett Smith talks about, I don't agree with that, and I think that I think it's really necessary, specifically for a lot of reasons, like the retinoic acid for the vitamin D synthesis, and to synthesize vitamin D correctly, it needs those retinoids to be able to accept vitamin D on the VDR receptor, and so the RXR and the RAR, all that stuff is really, really necessary. And I don't know, if you want to detox vitamin A, maybe just take a ton of vitamin D. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, their argument. Like I've heard Jason say this, that it's really hard to be vitamin A deficient because it's in so many foods, but he's referring to beta carotene. But yeah. I know the body uses, isn't it copper to convert beta carotene? To my understanding, it's copper to convert beta carotene into retinol. At least that's one of the cofactors. And so is it the beta carotene that's the problem, or is it the copper deficiency? I don't know. It's just, I think people get into the weeds there with demonizing the wrong thing.
Yeah. And I think that, I think the conversion too is less than, it's either 3 or 13%, I think. And I was reading research recently about that, and it's really challenging and difficult for the body to convert beta carotene to retinoic acid. And so to me, it makes so much sense. That's where like Morley stuff I really love, because when you understand that it's that, and I don't fully understand it at all, but it's apparently that 13-cis retinoic acid that allows the copper to be loaded into ceruloplasmin. And without that happening, man, that means if copper is unbound, that means it's going to be bound to some other protein like albumin or transcuprin or some other protein. And it's going to be, so then you're going to get an HCMA test saying you're high copper and you're copper toxic. But then that means iron's going to rise, right? Because of the inflammation. And then when that rises, magnesium's lowered as a result of that. And so you have this cascading effect of oxidation as a result of, not taking enough. And so this is what I worry about with the copper revolution group is, are they harnessing that copper? Like, are they allowing that copper to be loaded into that key protein, ceruloplasmin? And it's my understanding the only thing that can do it is retinoic acid, unless there's something I don't know. But, I don't know if all this unbound copper is a good thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's funny, all the vitamin C books I'm reading by like Andrew Saul and what's the other guy? Oh, the main vitamin C people. I think I have one by Linus Pauling on the way. A lot of them talk about copper toxicity, in the vitamin C conversation, but I don't take that as a sign to just throw out the book. I'm like, okay, I'll just take that with a grain of salt and then read the other information.
Yeah, I know, right? Because it's really difficult. And I think I made a post on Instagram a while ago about this. And I just said, like, rather than being in a group like the Ray Peat group or the Dr. Kruse group, why don't you just take the 60% of Ray Peat that you like and it works for you, and the 60% of Dr. Kruse stuff? Like, I think all of that DHA, man, oh my God. But he's got a lot of good stuff on light and understanding how light impacts our mitochondria. That's huge. Like, take what makes sense and then just discard the rest. And if Morley's right about something or wrong about something, I think it's okay to cherry pick, essentially, and just not be in any one camp. I think that's a real problem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I like Chris Masterjohn had some good articles he wrote. I think it was almost a decade ago or so, at least 5 years or more, on PUFAs. And he has some on fatty acids, and it was like Perilous or something. Perilous is in the name of the article, but it was a really long article all about polyunsaturated fats, linoleic versus linolenic. And I like the point he made that the essentiality of them, is like 4 to 6% of our intake. And to me, that makes me think of like iron and vitamin D. It's like you don't have to think about getting them. Like people are trying to boost their omega-3s. You're going to get them no matter what. And you'll probably fall within that 4 to 6% range,
Just
if
by
you're eating
default.
up in a balanced way and not right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I love Chris's stuff. I watched a ton of his videos, and he's got a really deep understanding of the physiology of stuff. He's great. And I think it's cool too to have someone like
Adam,
that.
our friend.
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Sorry,
no,
go
I
ahead,
just think he,
Justin.
no worries, no worries. Yeah, I think it's cool to just pull from a lot of different people and to try different things. And, like you have this on your show, like, people come on and they'll talk about things that are just completely, like, you think they're completely out to lunch about XYZ, but they have some really good information about something else, and you kind of just let them, it's not a time for debate, if they want to just believe that or think that, whatever, they got some other great information. Chris Masterjohn, I love his stuff. He's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to have a show all about iodine because Jason got me on that. And, I think about my chlorine exposure for my whole life. And now I'm like wondering if I've been tanked in iodine for years. I know like
Yeah.
Dr. Brownstein, I think he's one of the foremost authorities on iodine. I think he's actually been on InfoWars a few times.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there's this lady. I read her book a long time ago, Lynn Farrow, I think, and I reached out to her recently to do a show on iodine, and I think we're gonna set it up, but I have to follow back with her. But she wrote an iodine book, I think, Lyn Farrow, Farrow. I think that's what her name is. But yeah, I think that's another contextual thing. How much fluoride and chlorine have you been exposed to? Are you exposed to it on a daily basis? Maybe your iodine needs have to go up as a result. But so yeah, especially if you're doing the copper protocol
and
too.
even bromine, right? That other halogen, because I was like a cheese and bread Itarian, quote vegetarian for years, and I was just going out and getting like sandwiches with my friends multiple times a week, and it was like Subway style bread, yoga mat, bromine, who knows what else.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny.
It's kind of a random one. Eating leafy greens, what are your thoughts on that? I think because I recently started eating salads again after taking several years off, and I feel great eating a salad. I was curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't really consume salads. Like the other day, I had a green juice, which was, I felt like, let's just mix it up. I'll have a green juice. But I don't really do salads that much. I think maybe the benefit to them is just the fiber content and the ability for it to sort of act as like the carrot salad that Dr. Pete talks about, and just acting as roughage, without taking psyllium or something like that, improving digestion. And I think that's really helpful. And I think that, if you do like a carnivore diet where you're just getting basically zero fiber, I think it's honestly really important to have some kind of fiber coming in, and I know for me, I don't eat salads that often. I do the raw carrot salad like a couple times a week. I need to do it more, but yeah, I've been off the greens, ever since the raw vegan days. I haven't done too many greens at all.
Well, you were probably eating like a salad every day, right? I know I was when I was raw vegan.
Oh man, I would do a salad every day. I would have green juice. I would have a green juice every day, a green smoothie every day, and green powder and stuff I was doing. It was like green overdose. And I think that if you're doing something like that, there's a difference between having something every once in a while, like having some crackers that has canola oil in it, once or twice a year, versus doing something every day. And I was doing that every day for 7 years and not realizing that all that stuff, like you talk about, is loaded with iron. Like all of this plant-based food is loaded with iron, and, that's a real issue. And so I don't know. I've kind of steered away from that. And now I let the animals do the filtering for me, you know?
I'm sure you saw the recent Kim Kardashian commercial she did for Beyond Meat. It was like, it didn't even show her like taking a bite. It would always cut away. She's like, just like putting it up to her mouth, and then the camera would cut away.
No way. I didn't see that. No way. That's hilarious. Wow.
Good magic act. Yeah.
Oh man. That's like when politicians will get the sharp thing on camera, right? It's like a saline thing. Yeah. That's funny.
Someone asks, are they staying in California or piecing out? Because you guys were considering leaving, right?
Oh man, yeah, that's a discussion Kate and I have like on a regular basis. It's really hard because my family's here, and my mom's 81 and my dad's 81, and so they're at the point in their life where they are just like they need help, and so I have this philosophy that like it always sort of upset me when I would see how society treats its elders. And it really kind of made me upset to see that, because putting people in old folks home, like any one of us would never want to be put into an old folks home. Like that's the worst. Right. And to have family members that a mom and dad that love you and take care of you, and they change your diapers and they feed you and they give you food and they nourish you and they raise you and all this time and effort. And then for you to just leave on bad terms with them and not be close to them and help them in their elder years, to me just never made sense. And so until they pass, I don't want to leave California because I'm really good friends with them and they totally understand all the BS that's going on right now. And so they're like, I can talk with them about anything. And so I'm really close to them and I don't want to leave them. And Kate's family's here as well. And, Atom Bergstrom's here. So, but I want to leave, but I love the ocean and the beach so much that it's like, oh, it's so hard because nowhere would feel like home. Like my dream would be to have like what you have, like maybe in Hawaii, where you're right across the street from the beach. I could go surfing all day and then I could just homestead the rest of the time, But at some point, I think we may be forced out, and I hope it's not. I don't know. I hope it's not soon.
Yeah, I feel like we have time until things get bad. It's like every year, especially up here where I live in North Idaho, I'm in prepper territory. Like a lot of my friends up here that I meet that help me do stuff on the house, a lot of them are like, it's about to go down. I remember, I think last year, all the lights turned off at the Vatican, and that's never happened before. And this guy was freaking out. He's like, I would get gasoline right now. I was just like, I don't know. Just kind of the alarmist kind of, it seems like a lot of these people are just stuck in fight or flight. They're just like waiting for, the shoe to drop. And I don't know. You hear about Agenda 2030. It's like, we have 8 years, right? So
yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard too that they push that up from. I don't know if you've heard about the Deagle report where they talked about the population. Have you heard about that? Where they have like this Deagle is apparently a company that the government sort of outsources to look at projections in a number of different fields. And one of the things they do is they isolate different aspects of the population, and they do a 10-year projection. And in 2015, they did a 10-year projection for the population of the U.S. In 2025, and it was like 64 million people or something like that. And so all these people are saying like, what does that mean? Like how in 2015 do they know that, the US population is going to be reduced by that many people? I think that's like 1 in every, 5 people are going to be left or something. And so there's a lot of scare tactics. And I think if there's ever been a time where you should heed the advice of the prepping community, it's now. 10 years ago, I would have just sort of laughed at it and said, yeah, I'd like to prep. But if there's ever been a time where it's important to listen to some of that information and to not get bogged down in it, because you could get so bogged down in this stuff, dude. It's like, it could just make you feel like the world's going to end any second and you're just like neurotic, It's just important to have some less fear about that.
Yeah, I love that. I often think, because I went for years down the extraterrestrial rabbit hole. Like, I don't know, read 20 plus books on the topic, not channeled, like actual books on
Yeah.
it. And it's really tied. Stephen Greer talks about the connection with free energy and this, technology that's being suppressed. And being out here dependent on sun for my electricity, it just seems so archaic. And I'm like, man, if I had quote unquote free energy, or just, a machine like supposedly exists, like a little box that could power my house for 100 years, apparently from just, energy around it, whatever, the vacuum,
Yeah.
that would be a game changer. Like that would be the ultimate prepping tool. Because if you have power, you could do so much with that. You can make distilled water to make your own colloidal silver, which right now I have a distiller, but to run that thing for 6 hours, it's a ton of electricity. So just all these little things we don't think about that we could do if we had power. It's not just about running your computer.
Yeah, I know it's amazing to think about what could be possible, and like the suppression that we all know exists, with the gasoline and the oil and this, artificial shortages and all this stuff that doesn't really exist, but they tell us that there's limited amounts of these things. And, and the fact that like every person that comes up with some technology ends up dying, you're like, oh, another guy that invented, a car to run on water. Oh, wow, he died. Oh, that's odd, but these types of things are being suppressed, and if we could just get rid of all those people that are doing that suppression, imagine how amazing our life could be, dude. Oh, it'd be amazing.
Did you ever go down the oil rabbit hole? Like, I read a post this morning. It was saying like fossil fuels was a propaganda invented term to steer us away from understanding that oil is a renewable resource that's not a finite one.
Yeah, so apparently it's like the water shortages too. Like it's all connected to the hydrological cycle, which means that like the amount of water that's available has always been available, and there's no shortage of these things, but they're manufactured in such a way as to make us think that there's a shortage, and so they can control and manipulate who gets what and who gets access to how much and all that kind of stuff. And it's, it wouldn't surprise me. I think everything about what we know about the world is completely probably different than what we think it is. And so I like living in that mystery, personally.
Yeah, it's fun. To me, the virtual reality, like that we're living in a simulation, that Elon talks about, Elon Musk, that's what kind of freaks me out.
Yeah, I know. Like, you mean that like we are living in a simulation, like aside from the metaverse and all that stuff?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That to me is wild. Kate was just showing me. Have you ever looked at those pictures of like, of like celebrities that look like people that used to live in like the 1800s? And there's like pictures of all these current celebrities that have these like doppelganger counterparts that look just like them, and so it's who knows what we're living in, it's crazy.
Yeah, we could be like, I put this idea out there a month ago, and probably people put it out there before me, that you always hear about the artificial intelligence takeover, the singularity, right? Ray Kurzweil, and just like that's coming. But I was like, what if it's already happened and all these celebrities and politicians are AI and we think they're human, and then they're being controlled by, who knows, some draconian things or something. It's like you said, it could be way wilder than we can imagine.
Yeah, because like, to me, when I first got introduced into sort of alternative thinking, I remember I was like 12 years old, and they were teaching me how they built the pyramids, with these ropes and these slaves that would do it, right? And that was the first time I thought, that just seems way like too hard to do, And then, time went on, and then I ran into a guy who had a house down by the beach. And it's funny, like the beach riffraff, the people that live by the beach are just so funny and different. But this guy used to study ancient civilizations. And so this was like 1997 or 8. And he would always bring out his pictures and talking about how they built these ancient pyramids and all this stuff. And it just totally fascinated me, and it opened my mind up to like the suppression of information. And then when I started getting into the health field, you realize like, okay, so they're suppressing stuff on health, they're suppressing stuff on history, they're suppressing stuff on science, on religion, in every aspect of life there's suppressed information. And so it really is, to me, rather than having a formulated framework where nothing can change, I like living in a place where it's dynamic. And, if you're presented with new information, you're willing to change your mind. And that goes for like the dietary advice, but then it also gets into everything else, our history, where we live, and, whether we're being like a simulation, like you talked about. To me, when you live in that mystery and you're constantly searching, going down rabbit trails, that's, to me, what makes life like super fun. I love that.
Mm. That's awesome. Completely agree. So our mutual friend Adam here, Adam Marfiotti of Lifeblood, asks, what are his top alternative cancer protocols?
Oh gosh, did he distinguish like prevention or if you had cancer?
He didn't distinguish, but yeah, whichever one you want. Maybe if you already have it.
Well, like, to me, it comes down to like the production of energy. And if you can make more energy, then you can heal from just about anything. And so you have to look at the mitochondria and how, people create ATP out of that. And, that gets into the work of Morley, that gets into, the work of Jason with copper and that kind of stuff. And so in terms of prevention, I think really it's just a return to nature. And, I'm finishing up the book, The Magnesium Miracle, I think, by Carolyn Dean. And she talks about magnesium as that's basically the cure all and like end all cure all. And I think that, there's all kinds of things that you could do if you've been diagnosed. And so like depends, skin cancer is different, but if it's an internal cancer, I know Adam talks a lot about how cancer spreads in an alkaline environment and it metastasizes, or it grows in an acidic environment and spreads in I forget what he said, something like that. But
I think that's right. Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. But, there's so many different things. It's really hard because some people heal on Gerson, which is like total plant-based, 12 coffee enemas a day. Some people healing like doing the Hoxsey protocol or the Beljanski protocol. There's that protocol. Some people heal, if you're a part of the Morley Robbins group, there's people that have healed cancer using his protocols too. So it's really difficult to say, but I think it's really important for all of us to know that these protocols exist and to explore them. Because if you're just a normie off the street and the doctor says you have some extra cells growing, it just freaks you out. And then you're just like, you got to go 1,000 miles an hour to get where you and I are and where Adam is, because he's super, super smart. And you have to do this learning curve of like 20 years of research in like a year. And it's overwhelming to people. So I think it's really important to understand how the body works and to do everything you can to prevent it and to optimize your health so that it never happens,
That's an awesome answer. Yeah. My realtor, because I moved from my first Idaho house, and when I sold that other house, my realtor told me when I first met her, we're just talking about health, and I was telling her what I do for work, and she said, I taste iron when I eat a steak. Like I just get this really metallic taste. And I love steak. I wish I could eat it, but it's just too like metallic for me. And I said, it sounds like you have iron overload. And she says, really? And so basically I got her on like beef liver and, the copper and the magnesium and all the basic stuff. And now she's just like raving about it. And like, I think to what you said, like looking at someone's past is really important, especially when they come down with a diagnosis. It's like, what were they raised eating? Honey Nut Cheerios like me and Lucky Charms and Pop Tarts, and like what kind of water were they drinking? But just maybe most importantly, how much iron fortified food did they consume? Because I was just megadosing iron for at least 15, 20 years of my life, probably 20 years of just tons of iron. I don't even want to think of how many milligrams a day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's wild because like I know Morley says that there's like 9 different types of iron that are added to our food supply, all 9 of which are carcinogenic. And I think he explains something that's classified as a carcinogen has to promote, spread, and grow cancer. And apparently all 3 of those do, or all 9 of those do all 3. Which kind of makes you think, are they trying to do this or not? Do they know that it's doing this? And so like he basically flat out says that iron causes cancer. And it makes sense from a biological perspective. And you understand a little bit about oxidation and his work with that. And so, for me, it's like a foundation. I think that protocol, along with the CLF protocol, and addressing these root causes, I think is, should be at the foundation of someone's approach, and then you can explore other ideas. But there's so many people that have reversed cancers using so many different methods, like ozone and DMSO, IV. It's crazy what's out there. And so I think it's important for people to educate themselves, because the latest stats I looked at was it used to be 1 out of every 2 men would be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life, and 1 out of every 3 women. But the latest I looked at is if you're born after 1960, men or women have a 50% chance of being diagnosed at some point. And so that's probably because, I don't know, the non-native EMF like Dr. Kruse talks about, or that combined with the iron fortification program, who knows? But there's definitely a tie in there.
Yeah. There's so many factors. Have you done an episode on mold, Jason? Because we got or Justin, sorry, mixing up. Yeah. We've been talking about Jason Hommel so much.
No worries.
How bad is mold, and what to do if you're sensitive to it?
Yeah, so I kind of vacillate on this. I know you've done a couple shows on mold, and I've done a few on mold as well. Why is it? I always ask myself, why is it that some people can live in a mold-ridden house and be affected, and some people don't? And so Morley's answer is like, well, they're deficient in copper, because apparently the one of the copper enzymes, or one of the not histaminase, but another copper, I forget what it is, but basically it's copper dependent. And if you lack copper, you're going to have more sensitivities to not just food, but to mold and environmental toxins as well. And so I would follow, who was that girl? I follow her on Instagram, and I think you had her on your show too. She's really good with mold. Oh man, I'm forgetting her name.
Oh, is it PJ Harlow?
Harlow. Yeah. I would follow her work, because the mold is a whole separate thing that I would focus on: strengthening the host, balancing your minerals, freeing up energy so your body can produce ATP to deal with the mold. And then I would work on yourself as a host first. And then you definitely have to fix your environment. So if that means mitigating, I would work with someone like her to fully understand how to mitigate all the stuff that's going on in your home. And maybe it means moving,
Yeah, it's great. I know Charles Barber said with his ozone unit, he just runs it through, like if you have a central air, like if his family leaves for the day or vacation and he doesn't have animals inside, he'll just pump the ozone into the ambient air in his house and kind of just flood his house with ozone. Which, if you don't have a dog or a cat, you could do that. But he says when he gets home, he like opens the door and you have to like hold your breath and like go and turn off the unit and then open all the windows to air it out, because you can't.
Yeah,
it'll irritate your lungs. You can't breathe it.
Yeah, there's a lot of practical mitigation strategies, like the guy that started Living Stream's mission, he's got a mold product that you can spray, kind of like a fogger that you can spray throughout your house. I think that's like livingstreamsmission.com. But there's a lot of things that you could do. But I think strengthening the host is number one. and balancing your minerals as a foundation, and then obviously fixing your house or moving. But I don't think you could do one without the other. I really do think that, mold, like living in a moldy house is probably like having a mercury filling, where it's putting just a burden on your immune system, that your body's got to constantly deal with all the time. And so, yes, you can probably mitigate the symptoms by balancing your minerals, but why put that stress on your immune system? So I would fix both the environment and your home, or in your body as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. I remember PJ was saying the dishwasher is usually the worst. So she recommends like keeping the dishwasher cracked open, but she said over time it'll eventually grow mold if you close it every time after a cycle, because it's a dark, wet environment. And that
right.
That always stuck with me.
Yeah, it's funny you do these shows, like you've done 100 plus or something. I've done 700, and like sometimes you just take one or two things from an episode that you can remember, but it's all good.
This is a good one. Best advice to not come across as crazy to family and friends.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, having been in this since 2003, probably in a full-time way, I would say it's best to just not talk about it at all. There are times when, I'll go over to Kate's parents' house. Kate's parents are about as normal as you can be. And I'll go over there sometimes, and I'll have like my yellow glasses that I have on now. I'll be wearing those, but they don't really ask any questions. I just try to be as normal as possible. If I have a bunch of supplements, like if I'm going to eat some bad food and I have my, Mitolife, vitamin E and my enzymes and stuff like that, I'll literally just kind of take my supplements when no one's watching. Honestly, I don't really want to talk about anything like this unless they ask, because I don't know. It's just, if they're curious, they know what I do. But obviously people have their own thing and they don't want to, I think they feel threatened, a lot of people, because like you probably have friends and family that are on pharmaceuticals, and they know what you do, and they could ask you, and you could just give them 6 hours of a 6-hour conference, but they don't ask you. And so they don't ask me. So I just let it go. I don't really act strange. I don't know. I just try to fit in as much as possible.
I like that. Yeah, I'm the same way. That's a lower stress way, because I think if you try to get that savior complex of like trying to save friends and family, it just ends up taking you down. It's like, I think that's part of the whole agenda. It's like, stress us out.
Yeah, I remember Dr. Massey was on our show, and he does a lot of work with like recall healing and stuff. And he was talking about that Cartman's drama triangle, when he said that like each person lives in one of three energy fields, and that's the victim mentality, the perpetrator, or the helper. And we all sort of cycle in these three energy fields. We kind of go through like, I'm the victim, or I'm the helper, I'm the perpetrator. But we're sort of hardwired for one of those as our default state. And what he was saying was like, the people that tend to be the weakest in their immune system aren't like the perpetrator or the victim. It's always the helper. And he gave the example of like, you look at someone like Hugh Hefner, or some of these guys or the Queen of England, she's like 96 years old, or, George Soros, he's like 150, like these guys are so old, and yet they're doing apparently the work that they love, right? Which is God knows what they're really doing. But these people are connected to a mission, and they're not trying to, like, they have the perpetrator mentality. Like, they're going to go out and do and live their life the way they want. And it's always the people that are the weakest community are the people that try to help everyone. And my identity is like tied up in how I can turn someone around or cure them of this disease, when I just literally gave up on all of that stuff, because I realized how closed everyone is when this whole thing happened 2 years ago. Like, no one wants to hear my opinion on anything. And so, all right, that's cool. You get to go live and do whatever you want to do. And I'm not trying to change anybody,
That's awesome. I love that. It's the same with like private messages too, right? On social media, because I used to spend all day long, and I've done it, where it's just 8 hours just responding to messages and trying to help as many people as I could for free. But not only does that exhaust you when you do that, but the people are often ungrateful, and they just, my experience has been most of them just keep milking you for free information. And some of them might even turn around and attack you later on. So you just never know. It's just not like, you really have to protect your time and energy.
Yeah, dude, I remember, cause I'm in that phase right now where I'm doing that a lot. And you were doing that years ago. And I remember you started just leaning away from that. Like, I'm not your savior or whatever, you posted, like, I'm not your guru or something like that. You posted, but
On-call nurse. Yeah.
On-call nurse. Yeah. And I think, and I'll get messages from people like that are angry that I'm not responding and stuff like that, and when I do get a good question, I'll try to respond and screenshot it and highlight it, but, I don't mind doing that. And I like doing that because I want to, help people. But ultimately, like, it comes down to someone seeking out, like, if your health is to the point where you need like a response from me or a response from you in order to get better, then something's really not good, So I think ultimately it's like the Chinese proverb where they say that, like, the person that's doing the seeking, the remedy in the form of herbs would always help that person more, because they have to work for it, right? They have to, like, go out on an expedition and spend 3 or 4 hours trying to find this particular herb to heal themselves. And that's the journey. And so if I'm having a problem and I message someone, they don't get back to me, well, then I just got to go somewhere else and get that. So that's, you literally can't respond to everyone. It's just too much, especially with your account. You got like a million followers or whatever you have, it's
Well, it's funny. I've been shadow banned for like a year, to where they actually like slow. It's so crazy, the restrictions they can put on social media accounts now. Like, people message me saying that they almost can't search my name when they fully type in my name. Like, I think, you can type every letter Matt Blackburn except for the N, and I won't show up. Like, you have to do every letter. So it's just crazy,
I've had that happen.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've done that with you, and I can't tag you on Instagram either. I think that's been unavailable for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Justin, I should have asked you earlier, but I guess we still have time. I really wanted to talk about dental health and just teeth and gums, because I know you've had experience with studying root canals and stuff. And just a question for me, like, I guess just kicking it off, do you think it's important for everyone to get regular dental checkups, even if it's like once a year? Or do you think there's holistic ways around it? Because I've tried to, like, talking to Atom Bergstrom about this, and he was kind of cryptic in his responses every time I asked him about dental health. He would say, just look into the blotting brush, and that's about it. And then I know some people just, I did like a no brushing experiment, which didn't turn out well. And then some people do only flossing. And there's so many different schools of thought with dental health. And I just feel like it's like, I read a stat yesterday in a study I found. It said 90% of people in the US have periodontal disease. 90%. I was stunned. It's like, wow, that's almost everybody. So
wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I think that like with this stuff, I think it really depends on what you eat, and obviously what you eat. But then I think that, like, the more you dial in your diet and you take care of your teeth, I think the less you need to go get cleaned. I am a big advocate of going to a biological dentist. If it's just for like a cleaning or something like that, I don't think you need to go see a biological dentist for that. But if you're going to get like your mercury fillings removed, or if you're going to get like a root canal, or your cavitations kind of dialed in and cleared up and cleaned out, I think you really should see a biological dentist for that. And of course, every dentist will tell you that you have to come in once a year for a cleaning. But I don't think necessarily, if we're doing the right things, that you necessarily need to do that. I know Adam was experimenting for a while. Adam Marifiotti, with not brushing at all based on Dr. Cowan's work, and I don't think that that's really a good idea either. But I think that like doing some things, like if you could swish once a day with like an ozonated water, I think that would be really, really beneficial. I just came across some information the other day and I shared it on Instagram, where it talked about it wasn't sugar that's causing the dental decay and cavities, but it was this specific bacteria. And it was the excretions of this bacteria that causes the cavities to happen. And so it's not even sugar at all. And I'll bring it up here really quickly. But for me, I just floss and I do some ozonated water every now and then. I should do it more every day, but I take your vitamin K2. I take this product called Pearlsium, and you have another one with this like a pearl powder, basically. But I think it's possible to reverse cavities. I really do. And I think it's possible to prevent them. And I don't think you need to go get your teeth cleaned once a year if you're doing all the right things. But I know Adam had an issue with putting two different kinds of metal in his mouth. And that's what caused his teeth to decay. So this is a Staphylococcus aureus, aureus, and it consumes the residue on the teeth, and it's the waste of this bacteria that causes cavities. And so I just found this out a couple of days ago, so I'm going to look into this Staphylococcus aureus bacteria and see what I can find out about it. But I don't know. I mean, it's a real thing, because remember that guy that wrote that book? Oh gosh, what was his? Liam Sheff. Do you remember that guy? He wrote that book.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Official Stories, and it went into like the 10 official stories that the government's told us, like JFK, 9/11, all that stuff. But he essentially went to, I think, a non-biological dentist that took out his mercury fillings or something that caused some sort of neuralgia, some nerve damage in his jaw, and he ultimately ended up dying as a result of that. Like, it's a really big deal to make sure this stuff is done correctly,
That is wild. Wow. Yeah, and there's the whole like gum health aspect too, which I've been reading. Like vitamin C really supports gum health, and also retinol, vitamin A. Like I think cod liver oil was traditionally one of its uses was for gum and teeth problems, like just overall dental problems. Just increasing the vitamin A. And some people say it's the vitamin D, but I think it's more so the retinol.
Yeah, I think that I think that your K2 product would be like at the top of the list. Having some sort of a calcium based product that's like a living source of calcium. Like I think Crucial 4 has one. There's one called Pearlsium that could be used to brush with. I think blotting and flossing is really good. And I think rinsing your mouth with ozonated water helps a lot as well. But there's also this dentist that I was to a long time ago, like when I first got involved in this, that talked about all toothpaste has glycerin in it, most all toothpaste. And the glycerin prevents the remineralization of teeth. And I thought that was really interesting that you would get, like your dentist would give you a toothpaste with glycerin in it, which would or prevent the remineralization of teeth. And that makes total sense, because then you got to go back and see them for cavities, right? But finding a toothpaste that doesn't have that, I brush with like sea salt and baking soda, but also I think too, supporting things like getting off of the vitamin D, because that's going to screw up your teeth because of mineral and bone metabolism. But I think that understanding like connective tissue and realizing like collagen plays a big role too in bone formation, which I think Jason's mentioned that like 35% of bone is collagen, which is interesting. So, having those supportive proteins that make collagen, like copper and gelatin and things like that, can definitely help.
Yeah, those are great tips. Let's see, maybe one or two more here. Any thoughts on herniated discs?
Oh man, herniated discs. I can attest to that. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things you can do. I think that surgery is pretty low on the totem pole in terms of things that will actually work. Most surgery doesn't work for it. What I've done, and I go to a chiropractor on a semi-regular basis. If I could get daily chiropractic, I would, because I had an injury in my back years ago when I was lifting in the gym, and I didn't do it correctly. I was lazy and I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I've never been the same since. What I found that works really well for me is using the Fisher traction device. And I think that device is really important for me. Basically it's like $100 and you can attach it to your door, and it does the same. It does traction on your back. So essentially it just separates and allows the flexion of your discs back and forth to allow the disc to go back in, because that's what it wants to do. And you can release the pressure. And I wanted to do the Saunders device, but I realized like you got to get this pump thing, and it was like $600. It's just, you had to strap yourself into it. So I ended up going to a local place here that I think they charge like $100 or $200 a session, and they wanted me to go for 20 sessions for like a month. And after a month, I'm just like, I can't keep doing this. It's just too expensive. And so for $150, you can get a Fisher traction device, and it works better than that, in my opinion. And so I get massages on a regular basis. Obviously I do my minerals. I do DMSO topically from time to time and magnesium topically. So there's a lot of things you can do, but I think that you should avoid surgery.
You got me on that pump device. Was it the pressure pump or something that you put under your neck, like that balloon thing?
That's so good, huh?
I can't remember the name of it. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing's rad. Yeah, that
actually
thing is,
I went to a oh
no worry. Yeah,
I went to a house party, and I was sitting next to, I was talking to a chiropractor at a house party like a couple of months ago, and I was asking about that device, and he's a really advanced chiropractor in Washington, like beyond your normal chiropractor. Like he's doing like long-term rehabilitation for people. And he was saying like, yeah, that device works. You know, if you can't see a chiropractor, that's like a great thing to have. He's like, yeah, I've used them in my practice.
Wow. Yeah, there's other things you could do too. Like there's a lot of things that you could do. Like you could do cupping. You can buy these like devices now that use red light therapy and heat combined with cupping. You could do like neural therapy. There's a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, Jeff Harris out of Washington, I think, that has a list of neural therapy practitioners. You could do prolozone. You know, Atom, on our show about methylene blue, or no, was it Adam? No. Okay. So I was reading the book by Mark Sloan, The Ultimate Guide to Methylene Blue. And he was talking about in that book that you could get discs to go back into place when you're injected with methylene blue. And I was like, well, I never heard of injecting methylene blue into your back to let, for your disc, but apparently it's a thing. And so I brought it up to Adam, and I think he was going to look into it, but I haven't looked into that, but there's a lot of things you can do,
Yeah. I think that's why my account got shadow banned, was talking about methylene blue, because I got flagged for selling, quote, illicit drugs. And I think I was like promoting the Troscriptions, little trochees, little packets. Yeah. And it's wild. It must be effective.
Yeah, I know. It's really weird. These things that they get you on, this seems like innocuous, like, turpentine or MMS or methylene blue. Like these things don't seem to be big threats, but apparently they are. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Robert Cassar just texted me the other day, and he said he wrote like a 50-page little ebook or something on all the anti-parasitic medications, like mebendazole, and there's all the bendazole type stuff. And I think I have a few in my cabinet. And I guess a lot of them are anti-cancer treatments, these anti-parasitic drugs, but they're also effective against other, infections. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's a PDF out there, and I have it somewhere on my computer of a guy, and I want to say it's The Cure the Time Forgot, but that's more about methylene or ultraviolet blood. But there's that febendazole or mebendazole anti-cancer treatment, and people apparently are having really good success turning their cancers around with that. It's crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, it's wild, all the affordable therapies that we have access to that are just, people have no idea and they just get scared and they get pushed into whatever.
Yeah, totally,
um,
totally.
Let me see. Maybe we can end with this one. This is pretty good. What advice would you give to yourself 5 or 10 years ago, or at the beginning of your health journey?
Um, Geez, that's a good question. I want to hear your response too, but my response would probably be like, just keep an open mind and don't buy into any one person. And I still hold to that. Like, I don't think for a while there, when I first got into health, like in '03, I thought that raw food was the answer for everything, but I think that it's important to not buy into any one philosophy, because once you sort of take a position like that, then you kind of narrow your options. You marginalize your ability to see beyond what could be healing for you, And I think that, I purposely don't want to be someone who buys into all of Morley's stuff or all of Dr. Kruse's stuff or any one person. I want to stay outside of all of that and use parts of everything that they talk about. But I think it's really important to keep an open mind, and keep doing things where you're not doing them to prevent, you know, uh, like getting a sickness like they're saying is going around right now, or to prevent, like, I've got diabetes in my family, so I'm doing this thing to prevent the ultimate outcome, which is me getting diabetes or something like that. I think it's important to do these things because you love yourself, and you want to see how much energy you can have. You want to be the best version of yourself instead of just doing everything to prevent things. And so I look at it like, how long can we live? Can we live in a strong, flexible, able, capable body when we're 90, 100 years old? Is that possible? And going in that direction so that we're filled with energy and exuberance and excitement for life and all of that stuff, instead of just doing everything as a negative, like, oh, I want to just prevent cancer or something like that. Like, going to see what you can do in this world. I think that's the mindset to have.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. How about
Yeah,
you?
all of that, and I would add, uh, tune into your nervous system, because what I found off and on over the last 10 years is I'll get in these states where I don't recognize that I went down quite a few notches and just became comfortable there at that low level state of anxiety, or just not being fully grounded, and just being able to recognize when I'm shifting into those states, um,
Mm-hmm.
and just constantly kind of tuning in and checking in with my body and my nervous system to see. Like recently, I finally did the adrenal cocktail consistently, and this was after I moved back to Idaho in January, and I did 3 times a day, just very consistent with it. And it was a lot of work because it's fresh squeezed orange juice every
Yeah.
time, and so it's a time investment. But I also took a week off of coffee at some point in that month experiment, and I just found my nervous system healed substantially in that month from just giving it extra potassium, which most people are deficient in. They don't get anywhere close to 4,000 milligrams a day that they need, which, not to mention the sodium and the magnesium. A lot of the time magnesium will get the focus like I was focusing on, but I was forgetting about potassium and sodium, which are just as important. So that's the advice I would give to myself and others: just tune into your nervous system constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a situation, whether it's a relationship or a living situation, or a work situation that's keeping you stuck in that state, identify it. That's the first step of being able to get out of it. And once you're out of it, then you could regain your energy, your creativity, your balance in life, and keep moving forward at the pace that you want.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember first meeting you at that book launch. I think the Jing Slingers, like years ago, right? Um, in LA, and that was so fun. And it was funny because like Kate was there, and then like a lot of other wannabe sort of celebrities were there trying to like, promote themselves or whatever. But it was like you and your friends, you had a couple friends that were with you. And I was just talking with you the whole time because everyone else just seemed kind of fake to me. It was just fun to connect with you. And I was probably like 8-9 years ago by now.
I felt the same way. Yeah. I'm so glad that we met. And yeah, it's amazing looking back at like the divine orchestration of everything and how things happened. And, even me partnering with the wrong guy and, starting a project with the wrong person and going down this road for quite a long time, the wrong way. It was all worth it to connect with the right people ultimately and share different information that's actually improving lives.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
But yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate what you and Kate are doing a lot with your show. You guys inspired me. I wouldn't have this podcast without you. You were the one who stayed on me. Matt, you should start your own podcast, and you would just keep checking in every couple of weeks or every month. And it's finally like, okay, Justin, I'll start it. Fine. And, really, really credit you for that. Really appreciate that.
No, that was awesome. Yeah, because I remember I'd watch your Instagram stuff, and I was just thinking like, I don't have like on my phone, I don't have internet, so I connect to the Wi-Fi and then I turn it down. I turn it off, and so I just kept thinking like I'd like to download a podcast from you and listen to it, but you hadn't done one yet, so I kept on you about that. And your show is awesome, dude. It's like you have on the coolest guests, and you're really pushing the envelope with things. And to me, it's like the number one. It's like when your episode comes out, that's my favorite podcast. I listen to all your stuff, just constantly trying to learn more and more and more. So thanks for all you do, dude.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, and I'll keep sharing your show because I love the guests that you have on, and it's it's cool to find authentic people that actually care about helping people and that are passionate about continuously connecting dots instead of just staying comfortable with where things are at. Like we often say, the alternative health, right? So taking it at least one step further.
Yeah, totally. And it really does ruffle a lot of feathers because I get a lot of pushback, I'm sure you do too, about the vitamin D thing or fish oils or whatever the case may be. But I think that if you really want to help people, like, and you look at the evidence, you cannot promote stuff like that. And I just think for you, like what you did with Mitolife before, when you were promoting DHA and then you come into new knowledge, like to me, I don't know of any other person in the alternative health space that would do that or has done that. And you came out with that video, like why I was wrong about DHA, I think, or something like that on YouTube. And I just think it's so important to be genuine and to, if you actually care about helping people and you know that what you're selling is not helping people, it's okay to be wrong about stuff. Like it's okay to come into new information and to say, you know what, I'm no longer going to offer this product, or I was wrong about this. And I think you're doing that. And I hope that like other people will do that as well. Maybe they'll catch some of what you're doing and be able to like walk away. But it's hard, dude, when people are like making so much money. And like you and I know who we're talking about, making hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars a year on products they know are damaging people. And you just have to watch out, like snakes in the grass, like you mentioned in a recent comment about someone we both know recently. And it's true, there's a lot of snakes out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think that's a big reason why I created the CLF protocol, the calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis. And I joke about mentally handicapped population, but when you step back and look at it just from a just objective standpoint, just looking at how people think and what they fall for, like that recent documentary about the snake venom, and everyone was getting so emotional about that. And then the creators of that documentary, I was not surprised in the least, turned around and promoted their supplements. It was all a sales pitch for their supplements.
Right,
it was
right,
like
right.
zinc and all the normal stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, just being able to see through stuff like that, I feel like you don't need any lab work or blood tests or full Monty. Like that is like the IQ test in the state of health. If you can kind of, discern and see through the BS and the marketing and the people that aren't really sharing from the heart, that are just out to ride a wave or, to cash in on the latest thing,
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people are like that. And I was thinking about Mitolife the other day in terms of like a supplement company, because like you look at like a supplement company that like I don't know, you go to the health food store, like maybe Now, for example, like Now supplements. Like I don't know who's behind that company. I don't know who they are or who's the guy that started it. I know generally they're pretty well trusted by people that I trust. Like I know Atom Bergstrom. I think he's mentioned some good things about them. But like, it's really, I think, beneficial to have like what you have going on is like you're behind Mitolife and you're providing, like people can see what you're doing every day. You're sharing all this stuff because you're passionate about it. And with a lot of these supplement companies, I think they're just riding the wave. They're not passionate about it. They're passionate about business and making money, and nothing wrong with that. But it's just, I don't know. I think there's something cool about what you're doing. I hope more people start doing that too.
Oh, I appreciate that, Justin. Yeah, and that's a good point. That's why I like buying from Adam's company, Lifeblood, or people that I know, Charles Barber, like these small family-owned companies, because I know their intention and their long-term view. Like what I plan on doing to the money, with the money that I make, I'm pretty transparent, is like pushing the envelope with homesteading. And I don't know, I don't think I've ever told this story on my podcast ever, but when I was in communication with Glenn Calkins in Southern California, we just smoked a cigar and we were in the parking lot outside of the cigar lounge, and we're talking about eating animal products, because I think I was vegetarian on the fence with eating muscle meat at that point. And he introduced this idea to me of like, it's so barbaric the way that we're farming now, with cutting a chicken's throat or putting a bolt through a cattle's head, or all the methods. He's like, how would you like if I did that to you? We're living in the Stone Ages kind of thing. And he's like, no, you take dry ice, carbon dioxide, and it shuts off the nervous system of the animal, and it's completely painless, and they die, and it doesn't affect the meat at all. And I looked into it. I didn't just take his word for it. And there is legitimate research that is exactly true. So why aren't we doing it? Well, because people are just comfortable with the way that the system is. And that's, with my growing domes here. And I think there's just, I'm going to put lodestones in there, and there's to bump up the voltage. And there's things that just aren't being done that should be being done or experimented with, because we should be moving forward. We shouldn't just be trying to go back to how things were done. It's like there's actually better ways that aren't, lab grown meats and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think all of that is so important. It should be promoted more. And I think that when you see like influencers that are in the health space buying Teslas and getting these fancy cars and stuff, I mean, one part of me says, okay, there's nothing wrong with like buying a nice car and stuff like that. But when you're promoting that as your lifestyle, and it's clear that like business and money and success is your primary concern, and helping people and your own health is maybe a second and third or fourth, concern. I think it's really easy to start seeing through a lot of these people, because, if you're really passionate about health, you're going to be creating new products that help people. You're going to be doing what you're doing with the homesteading. And so it really just turns me off when I see these people like, buying fancy houses or these cars. And I mean, I'm all for that, but I don't know. I think there has to be a balance. And to me, I could just see right through it. So I'd rather just, buy your products and other people's products that I know are, really into health, So.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. And it's been kind of slow the last, I would say, year with Mitolife with coming out with new stuff because of just personal life stuff that, some people have gotten glimpses of on my social media with moving and relationships and stuff. But, yeah, it's going to speed up the second half of this year. And I'm really excited, like that water filter that my team and I were building from scratch. I'm so excited about. And it's just, it's just getting a few more things in line and just we'll be able to start building them and getting them out there. But I have some really cool, exciting ideas for products coming out. We'd like to get into the bee product business and just have, different supplements than pills or different products than pills that we provide.
Yeah, that's awesome. So. Anytime I think of something that I think would be really cool, I always like, dude, make this on Mitolife. And I remember I'm like, dude, figure out a way to get rid of the polyunsaturated fatty acids and the vitamin D from cod liver oil. Make a supplement like that, Oh man, that's pretty funny.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm working on the elk velvet antler right now because I've been taking that for years, and I love elk velvet antler. It's really powerful. It has so many applications, and I've been promoting my good friend David Limecker in Canada, Vigor VIGR. He has the best one that I found, but it's a powerful one. So I'm working on that, and US based instead of Canadian based. But awesome. I appreciate you sending me all the ideas because that's the fun part for me is like the R&D and like thinking up new things.
Yeah, totally. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm just I love what you're doing, and thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, I appreciate it, Justin. Yeah, thank you. And I'll put the link to where people can check out all your stuff below. Would you say streamhealthradio.com is like a good hub to find all your stuff?
Yeah, we have links on there to our Instagram and our YouTube and our Telegram. I'm going to try to get on Telegram more because I just see the censorship, kind of going more. I need to spend more time on Telegram, even though the owner of it is part of the WEF forum. But be that as it may, I'm going to try to be on there more. And yeah, we do our shows once a week on Sunday night. They come out, and then the other 6 days of the week we do our best of episodes. And so we replay those. I think I just replayed our one together about calcification, so that was super fun. That was awesome.
I appreciated that. Yeah, and you guys have a cool store too, like Biocharge Me, and you inspired me to look at the Fisher Traction because the Saunders is a lot of work, and I bought one from like the Yoga Swing people, and it's just hard to use, and it was kind of wonky and not built right. It was the one like you hang from the door. I think I made one post about it where it looked like I was hanging myself. It was just like not very well designed.
Yeah. The Fisher Traction is that thing is awesome, dude. I'm telling you, like it works really well, and it's like $100 or $150. It's worth it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the message, Justin. Just everything that you and Kate are doing, and what you stand for, and your podcast, and just thanks again for coming on the show. This was awesome. We'll have to do it again.
For sure, man. Yeah, totally appreciate it. And I think we started doing a deep dive on the CLF, and I think we did calcification, and I think we need to do lipofuscin and fibrosis as part 2 and 3 of that little synergy there. So. Yeah,
we do. I just finished my ebook, and I'm just on the fence if I need to add pictures to it or just get it out there without pictures. But I kept adding to it, and it's so complex with those 3 things because I keep finding not only are all 3 of them connected, but things like retinol itself actually helps with lipofuscin, to prevent it. And so there's so many pieces to the puzzle that just it keeps going deeper and deeper. But I guess talking about it to the point where I currently understand it could be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Is that going to be like a paid thing or is that going to be a free book?
Free for sure. Yeah, I just want to get it out there, and yeah, I'm hoping the next few weeks to be nice. I just have to find some cool little graphics to throw up there to help people's understanding, because it's pretty dense. Like I just have tons of information packed in each page. So.
That's awesome, dude. That's so cool. That's great. Yeah. I can't wait for that to come out. And I'm really excited to see all the new products that you're working on in Mitolife. And it's super fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, man. You'll love the drinking water filter. That's been a true labor of love. And yeah, I recently decided a couple days ago that my whole house filter is taking too much electricity with the two pumps, because there's basically a pump to pump it throughout the house from the storage tanks, and then a pump to pump it through the filters. And being fully off grid, it's not really practical. So I'm actually switching to a basic 3-stage. I don't know if you've seen those big blue cartridges. Like usually there's like 3 of them. So it's just called inline. So there's no pump. My spring water is just going to go direct through those. And yeah, my water's already 30 ppm here in spring water, so I can't complain. But because I'm filling awesome. My hot tub and bathtub, I like it to be like super clean. Yeah,
dude. So one final question I want to ask you: how do you like the lodestone tub? Do you like it?
Oh yeah, I'm shooting for yeah, words can't. I actually just found a study yesterday, 1977, by the journal Physics of the Earth and Planetary Interiors. I don't know how I found the study, but it was a study on the magnetic properties of lodestones, and it was fascinating. There's actually a picture in the study of the magnetic field, like a visual representation of the magnetic field pattern emitting from the lodestone, and it actually looks like a vortex. It's really cool.
Wow, dude.
And I guess these were discovered, I think in the 1600s was when William Gilbert wrote his book on it, Magnete. But they were originally used to charge compasses, basically to magnetize compasses. And the study I found showed that the Earth doesn't have enough magnetism to magnetize these. It's made of iron, so it's basically making this iron super magnetic. It said that it has to be lightning strikes, but I guess no one's ever recorded it or measured it at the time of it happening. But it's literally a lightning strike that physically hits magnetite and turns it into lodestone, a permanent magnet. So it's super wild.
Way.
Like it,
wow.
Yeah. And it's felt definitely charging, because it's a source of not only magnetism, but you're getting directly fed electrons. And so I have it grounded rod to earth, and they're all aligned to magnetic north. So they're all in series, and it's all grounded, and it's all actually combined with I put magnetite powder in the grout, so it's all cohesive. So in between each stone, it's all conductively connected with magnetite. And I put shungite in there. It's
I always make that joke. We're like, some people will buy Teslas, and some people will invest in a skid steer and a magnetic bathtub. That's awesome. Oh, that's
best. I think this might be the second. I think it's the second in the world. I think Glenn had the first one. I don't know of anyone else that's built one, but the hardest part was actually finding the lodestones. I barely had enough to finish the tub. The guy on eBay actually ripped me off for a lot of money and never sent them. And so if we didn't shave them down to make them flat and just try to do it with the rough stones, I would have only had maybe a quarter of the tub. But yeah, super grateful to have that done, because I think it's the most powerful, if you want to call it biohacking device you could have. It's completely natural. It's not man-made PEMF thing. It is pulse though.
Yeah.
It is pulsed magnetism. When I hold my digital magnetic meter up to it, it actually pulses anywhere from 5 milligauss. I've seen it pulse up to 180 milligauss. So it's like a wide range of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I bet it feels so good. So do you do that once a day?
That's the goal. It ends up being like every couple days, but I'll sit in there and read a book or listen to a podcast. And what I've been doing is like 2 gallons of my raw goat milk in there, and maybe like half a cup of shilajit powder. And I haven't done magnesium yet, just because I have so much milk I can't keep up with. I get like a little over a gallon a day from my one goat, and so there's no way I could drink that much. So I end up doing it Cleopatra style. But talk about transdermal minerals. Like, I think
I was gonna say you should do copper in
bath.
Oh, right. sorry. That'd be awesome, dude.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, it's fun. I've done a lot of experiments with magnetism. I think you have as well. Like I went from grounding sheet to the Magnetico back to grounding. And I know a lot of these biohackers, they promote like earth pulse and different things you could set up in your bed that pulse you while you sleep. But I just question the safety of those a little bit.
Yeah, because I remember Dr. Kruse talks about how they all produce an RF field. And he said that's not good. But I don't know. Especially like if you're going to do like a magnetic mat, like I have an IMRS mat, and you can lay on those for like 10 or 15 minutes. But if you're going to sleep all night long on something that does that, I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that. That's 8 hours. That's a long time.
Yeah, maybe if you're in like a hotel or something. I do that once or twice a year when I go to a conference or something, and it's always fun to implement every year something new and seeing if I could like the dirty electricity filters were a game changer. When I drove back up here from Colorado, I plugged into that Best Western hotel, like probably 10 of them, and I slept better than I've ever slept in a hotel from having all those plugged in.
Oh, I know. We have them all around our house, and like next to the kids' beds, next to our bed. Like, man, it's like you can feel it. It's powerful. And it's something. So for like $30 for one, you can get a handful of these and just put them all around the house. It's such a huge game changer. Super easy too.
Oh yeah. Well, sorry, Justin. We can keep going forever. I should let you go.
Yeah. No worries.
Well, this was awesome. I highly recommend you guys check out his Extreme Health Radio Academy. You're who inspired me to do my academy, and I recently had to half it down from 4 videos to 2, just because it's huge time investment. I make like 30-minute videos, so it's in depth.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome.
Thanks, Justin. Stick around as we close out the show. Thanks so much. That is all for today's show. That was really fun. I could talk to Justin for hours. I really appreciate his open mind, his passion, his drive to help people. It's really cool what him and Kate are doing over there at Extreme Health Radio. And if you haven't listened to their show, I highly recommend you check it out, especially their episodes with Atom Bergstrom and Morley Robbins. Those are some of my favorite shows that they've done. I get so many people messaging me with health questions every day, and it blows my mind that people don't want to put in the time to connect the dots and to figure it out. They just want someone to give them the answer. In my experience with my personal health journey, it's been a spiritual experience to heal myself, and it's always healing ourselves. There's no healers, nobody heals you. It's always yourself that's doing the healing, but other people connecting the dots, and most importantly, you connecting the dots from multiple people, you can really start putting the puzzle pieces together and get a broad view of what's going on. my opinion, not only with your health, but with the entire world. The more you balance these vitamin and mineral deficiencies and get enzyme pathways opened up and activated, that's really what it's about. We're not supposed to get lost in our diagnosis and always be struggling with different symptoms. That's not the natural human state. The natural human state is to be in a good mood most of the time, to have energy, to have mental clarity, to have good memory, have good sleep. These are all natural byproducts of having vitamin and mineral balance. So definitely subscribe to their podcast. They have a lot of YouTube recordings up there. Sometimes on the podcast app, it's hard to go back and find old shows. I know that's the case for Mitolife Radio. So on YouTube, it's sometimes easier to find their old podcast episodes. And definitely check out their store called biochargeme.com, where they have all of their recommended products. And that Fisher traction device, especially the neck one, has been blowing my mind. It's really awesome. I really appreciate what they're doing to share the message of Mitolife and the CLF protocol. And if you head over to mitolife.co and purchase any of my products, if you use the code EHR15, you'll save 15% on any of the Mitolife products, and you'll support them over at Extreme Health Radio. If you go to matt-blackburn.com, you can see all of my recommended products. Next week's show is actually going to be with the people that created the Analemma water wand, which is a really fascinating technology that increases the biophoton emissions in the water. So if you enjoy water science and water quality, I think you'll really enjoy that one. Check out the Mitolife Academy. That's my private YouTube, where if you want access to more content, more detail of lifestyle stuff, biohacking stuff, supplements, protocols, devices, new things that I'm trying, it's $15 a month. And I recently changed the subscription model because I've been too busy here, juggling too much on the homestead, getting set up, working on growing fruits and vegetables here, which takes a lot of time and energy investment to get that going. So I cut it back from 4 videos a month to 2 videos a month, but it is more affordable. So there's only 1 tier now instead of 3, and it's $15 a month, and you get access to 2 private videos and 1 live Q&A the last day of every month. And I actually just recorded and posted the Q&A for June. So if you sign up, you get access to pretty much 2 years of previous videos and all of the previous live Q&As. So that's really fun for me, and it's a great way to connect with the community. And stay tuned for a new Mitolife Radio episode released every Friday. Stay supercharged.